Hello, romance lovers. Today I have a story for you called Please Divorce Me, I Have to Be Emperor. Don't forget to support this video with a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. Thank you for watching. The man raises the scroll in his hands. As the king of Dehan, he announces his intentions to divorce. Aroa no longer has a place in this palace. Since the girl is not a resident of the empire, she only has the right to leave the castle and return to her homeland. The young man prepared one old cart. Perhaps the heroine would be allowed to stay only if she begged his majesty. Larissa steps forward, complaining about the cart she arrived in. She's even more tired of talking than of the road. The girl is the daughter of Count Estea, the richest man in Deir Khan, and was appointed as Her Majesty's personal servant. Although she does not have royal blood, because of her status she lived in the castle. The woman is also the king's beloved. He did not even hide his relationship with her. The beauty knew about the blonde's situation, so she came because she was worried. Banus gave his beloved a special decoration. The tiara, decorated with black diamonds, is a set with the crown of Dehan. The jewels that were inlaid into the decorations were the dowry sent by Aroa Kaision. No one expected a man to do this. The maiden who had the most noble name of the empire, the only heir, became a doormat. The woman received the news and divorce papers in a shameful manner. People around her were whispering, but she didn't care because finally everything was over. It was decided not to worry about the queen's status because she was just a former ruler. All family members bowed their heads before Dehan, and she was just a divorced lady with nothing left. The blonde must come back and spend the rest of her life hiding in some tower, away from the eyes of other people. Ms. Larissa, others say, would be a more suitable candidate for the new ruler. It was common knowledge that His Majesty did not love his first wife, and most thought that he would avoid divorce for the good of the family. Queen Aroa is the half-sister of Emperor Luciano, ruler of the entire great continent. The girl is also the niece of Duke Rickle, who is called the ruler of the southern lands. Binus married the lady for this very reason. He managed to save his reputation, having only a small territory. The marriage of convenience lasted a little over 2 years, but eventually the man changed his mind because of his mistress. Larissa could no longer be content with the position of some servant, so she was given the title of queen. Of course, it was not an easy decision. Over these more than 2 years, there were several reasons to start the divorce process. The first event was the heroine's pregnancy, followed by the queen's strange behavior towards her mistress and more. It would be better to say that the lady treated Estea with particular cruelty. There was one last step that was taken the day before everything ended. The man was told that his relationship with the emperor would continue even after the divorce, so he had nothing to lose. One night, a messenger from the king came to Durkhan. The man was a magician and resembled an ice sculpture. The kingdom has proven its ability and loyalty many times, so there won't be any problems. Arno's dowry was only a small part of the country's wealth, and one would not want to spoil relations over such trifles. It dawned on the blonde that if Luciano didn't mind, he wouldn't have to put up with his wife any longer. It was time to end it all. Now the man stands in front of his ex, looking at her with a contemptuous look. Initially, the king had no desire to leave the lady with nothing. If she had been smarter, she would have continued to live at the palace. If the girl had asked to love herself at least once, perhaps everything would have turned out completely differently. The man simply wanted the girl to be like Larissa, a little simpler and better. A lady could simply go into the bedroom and secretly flirt with her husband. There was nothing wrong with that. Each time the girl left Dehan alone and made way for her mistress, as if she didn't care about anyone. Aroa had never been truly interested in the young ruler. Her coldness was probably due to the fact that she considered the man a bird beyond his feathers. Until the very end, the blonde is all correct, trying to look good in her own eyes. Turning away, the blonde no longer wants to see the princess's face. He will live peacefully, knowing that she has returned to the tower. Her hands reach for the papers. Since the divorce has already been confirmed, she no longer has to observe any decency. Getting up from her knees, the blonde smiles. Finally, her ex-husband is no one anymore. She's never been so happy. Raising his eyebrow, Dehan tries to build a chain of thoughts for the lady, but it is extremely difficult for him. There is wind in her head. The heroine is either in shock from the divorce or she has completely lost the remaining drops of sanity. The only thing the Empress does is to thank for the ending. She waited for this for 2 years. They lasted like an eternity. The voice lowers, as if the lady still hasn't realized what situation she's found herself in. The young man can't stand it. He doesn't want to hear about how he did a good deed. The smile never leaves her face. It wasn't Her Majesty who started all this, but her ex-husband who was like a thorn in her side. The man had never seen such an expression on his face in 2 years. Something urgently needed to be done about this. The girl is probably in such shock that she doesn't understand where this is all leading to. It's as if she's forgotten. Without listening to her ex-husband's words, the lady calls Belle, asking her to convey the Emperor's last will. A figure appeared in the middle of the hall, and it gradually became clear that it was a man with white skin and dark, pitch-black hair. The face is perfect because it was created by the gods. The same magician whom Banus saw at night appeared nearby. Because the young man was ordered to show himself, he no longer knows whether he is an envoy or an assistant, the Empress called him, as she has the right to do so. It turned out that Luciano had died. He had been overcome by illness, and the man had arrived to deliver a message. The blonde doesn't believe it. Everything was fine with the ruler. The words sound more like a fairy tale. The empire had been in the hands of the Kaiseon dynasty for centuries, and young Luciano had no heirs. The first contender for the throne was the second Prince Arion, of course. He lived next to his brother in the palace. Next in line was the king's half-sister, Aroa, and still unable to control himself, Dehan asked if His Majesty the Prince had taken the throne. Unfortunately, he also passed away. Both were sprayed. It turned out that the disease was a cover, in fact. Poison was found in the food. People fell silent. They didn't think that such a thing could be real, that someone dared to attack the ruler. The Virgin tries to shut up her ex-husband. The magician arrived personally to notify about the death, so the news is only true. Now Banus doesn't know what to do. It was a situation that no one could have imagined. Only a few years had passed since the beginning of the reign of Luciano, who did not quarrel with anyone and had many allies. His Majesty was about to leave the empire on business, but in the morning he was attacked. Since Arion also left no heirs, the throne rightfully passes to the next member of the king's family. According to the marriage contract, the husband will inherit everything that falls to the wife's share, and this is not just about property. The title is mentioned in the papers. Initially, the successor was the King of Dehan. His Majesty could not bear it and fell to the floor. If the man had waited just one more day, the continent would have been his alone, but now the dreams were shattered. The divorce took place before the announcement of the emperor's death, so another person takes the place of the ruler. Everyone knows him very well. The one who will ascend the throne is Arnoa Kaiseon. In the place of the subjects, it would be better to bow your head. Banus steps back, what he said still echoing in his mind, the smile on his face growing even wider. The heroine suggests showing due respect to the new emperor of the continent. This is how proper people behave. Pushing Larissa away, the young man gets angry. In his opinion, the Queen of Durkhan cannot become the one who will lead the countries. The lady just snorts. She doesn't care about the words of her ex-husband. When in the emperor's message, she still takes the throne. It's time to stop pretending he didn't hear anything. The hero should calm down and accept his fate. They will not continue the dialogue further. If the man cannot demonstrate standards of decency, it is time to get down to business. The dowry that was brought, there was a whole cartload of gold. The lady orders that everything that was delivered be prepared immediately, and she was told to leave the palace by the end of the day. The young man had never seen such a cold-blooded face on Arnoa. It was as if she had become another person, unknown to anyone. Banus remained silent, so they turned to him again, reminding him that the queen does not intend to wait any longer than required. The emperor's message conveyed that the cart of gold was only a small part of the riches and that nothing needed to be returned. The magician said that the family did not want to conflict with Dehan over some trinkets brought along with Her Majesty. The brunette steps forward. He doesn't understand when this happened in reality, because the data transfer took place on a different plane. Apparently, the king is a man of limited intelligence. He should have explained better, adding more details. Since the young man still hasn't understood, he is obliged to return all the money if he doesn't want to be left without a head on his shoulders. His Majesty continues to repeat to himself that he himself does not understand what is happening. He thought that life would be better, but It turned out the opposite. The ex-husband has about an hour for everything. The cart must be filled with gold, the same as what was brought 2 years ago. If the contents of the treasury are not enough, the young man will take the jewels from the roofs and walls. But even if this is not enough, the swords and armor of the guards will be used. If there is still not enough money, Arnoa orders to shave himself and cut off Larissa's hair. This will help fill the void. The girl was about to leave, but then she stopped. She turns around, reminding him of Anastasia's black diamonds. Let's not forget that what glitters on the crowns of His Majesty and his mistress, he specially encrusted the jewels, now he will give them back. Furchin allows the Empress to remain silent. He asks her to fulfill the will of Her Majesty. Larissa is shaken with fear. She asks Banas what they should do now and how to get out of the situation. The man was silent for only 30 seconds. Everything that was required was done for him. The magician rips the crown off his head. Trying to carefully smooth the beauty's hair, the king shouts about all the problems that Furchin brought. Stepping forward, the blonde tries to protect the woman, asking what the stranger is doing, but he, choosing the moment, takes the tiara even from him. The behavior goes beyond all boundaries of what is permissible. There is no way to hide from it, no matter how much one would like to. King Dehan is being ignored, which only makes things worse, and the anger comes out in double quantity. The dowry that the man's wife brought he gave to his mistress. As if it was something in the course of things, he did not notice the problem. Belle slams the jewelry against a nearby column to retrieve the stones, which instantly fall to the floor. The seizure ended quickly enough. Picking up the diamonds, the young man steps closer to Her Majesty. As the woman asked, Furchin gave her what she asked for, smiling. The magician asks if he did well. Now, the queen is about to leave. She does not want to see stupid faces. She has already seen enough. The blonde is very interested and can't wait to see how much she got back and what kind of jewelry. Today is the best day in the life of Her Majesty. Arnoa remembers how Luciano showed her the view, almost throwing her off the balcony. Everything she saw did not belong to her. Her life belonged to a man, as if he were on a distant continent, and she had to remember this until the end of her days. The Virgin should not count on the throne. She is a nonentity who can die at any moment. After the death of the previous emperor, the young man immediately locked his sister in the tower of the palace, and upon reaching adulthood, she married King Dehan, thus getting rid of her. The union was a profitable marriage. There were not even words about love. Banas only liked the dowry. The lady turned a blind eye to the betrayals, because the most important thing was that she managed to get out of that little tower in the castle. The young man was always close to Larissa, believing that meeting her was a destiny written by the gods. The lady always said how happy she was to be with His Majesty. The blonde served as their personal maid. Even at that event, she stood next to the glasses of champagne while the couple were making out. The mistress reminded the king that he himself had asked the woman to stand so that someone would hold the drinks. Then, smiling at his beloved, the blonde thanks the queen for her help. The young man didn't think that Arnoa would stand next to him, because usually it is extremely difficult to make her do something. Estea smiles. In any case, there is no longer any need for shamanism. His Majesty does not like warm alcohol. In order to keep the girl close to him, the first thing Banas did after the wedding was to appoint her as his wife's personal servant. Virgo is feeling unwell and is going to go on vacation. It's a pity. Larissa wanted to enjoy the wonderful day with her. Of course, they are not averse to the girl's company. She can stay, but she is not obliged to. The beauty goes to the throne, where she sits down with her lover. She has taken her rightful place as queen. The woman was thrown out of the hall, but not with words, but with actions. Running out of the hall, the girl rushes down the corridor. The blonde doesn't know when everything went so wrong. Probably when on their wedding night, the man went off to seek Larissa's company. Banas invented something that didn't exist. He told high society that his wife's body didn't impress him. The management of the household was also entrusted to the mistress. If something was needed, Her Majesty had to obtain permission. The young man constantly put his future wife above the one who, according to him, was just getting in the way. The king was a fool from the start, and that's what he'll always be. Anyway, that's the truth. The heroine was ready to endure everything that happened, just so as not to return to that hated tower from which she was released. The half-brother hated his sister from birth. Apparently because of her mother's blood, she lived in the duchy of Rykiel. Her father was weak in body, and so he died together with his mother. After that, Luciano ascended to the throne. Knowing what her position was, the main character tried to live quietly with Anastasia's relatives. Nothing worked. The brother locked Her Majesty in a tower near his palace, not allowing her to do anything. Despite Banis's antics, things were better in Dehan. The blonde could endure everything. It wasn't difficult. Larissa's tiara was a blow to her pride. It contained black diamonds belonging to Arno's mother. The woman received the stones in her youth as a gift from the king. They were well known in high society. When the maiden first saw part of her dowry on the crown, she began to get angry. Her aggression level increased sharply, and later fear appeared. Count Estea, seeing his daughter next to the king, decided that the baby could become the new queen of the country. After this thought, attempts were made on Her Majesty's life. First there was poison in the food, and then mercenaries in huge numbers. The woman was truly scared. She could not hide in any way, and eventually the castle ceased to be any different from the tower. The lady cannot stand it, but she wants to live. Going to the room, she hopes for a well-deserved rest. As she enters, she freezes, her eyes wide, and there is a huge leopard lying on the floor in front of her. A strange expression appears on her face. Perhaps this is the Count's doing again. Her Majesty has no other options. The only thing that is unclear is why the animal is so huge. Such a size has never been seen before. The hand easily hits the head because of fatigue. Something begins to appear. It is better to go to rest. Before going to bed, the lady goes into the corridor to call someone to remove the beast from the room. An objection is heard, and in a split second, the heroine finds herself on the floor, crushed by the leopard's weight. Before the queen's eyes, a man appeared in front of her, who did all this with the help of some strong magic. A high-ranking magician stands in front of her, and it's not so easy to understand what's going on, since the young man prefers to remain silent for now. If Aroa is standing in front of him, the conversation will be simple. The girl has received a letter from her old friend. Anakin writes to the heroine that if his friend wants to leave Durkan, he will gladly take her and find a motive to curse the kingdom. The arrogant guy has been behaving worse than ever since the academy. The brunette decides not to go into details, asking to finish reading the message. It turned out that the emperor and his heir had been killed, and the young man had sent a gift so that it could be used. Willow sincerely wishes him luck and still looks forward to the lady meeting him again. The heroine has too many experiences inside her. She does not believe that the brothers were killed. This means that the empire is passing to her. I would like to rejoice if only at the wedding ceremony Her Majesty did not transfer all the titles to her husband. At that time, the ruler of the lands was Aryan, so the blonde's head was turned off. She did not think that the title would be hers. If both are no longer able to ascend the throne due to their death, Dehan will go there. The lady seems more angry than upset by this news. Even the magician himself, sitting opposite, notices this. The girl wants to know more, but it seems that the explanations on paper have ended, limited to 2 words. Belle asks mockingly, asking if he needed to buy anything before he showed up. Obviously, there is nothing. This stranger is too noble to appropriate someone else's property, so this option is out of the question. A picture begins to form in my head. The blonde asks why the magician arrived. He, as a good friend, fulfilled Willow's request. According to Anakin, there are no people in the Magic Academy who can be classified as good. The young man waves it off, saying that he has his own reasons. It's not hard to guess. He made some kind of bet. Those who wield power have their own price. If someone calls a magician by his full name and offers a bet, he is forced to agree. The unshakable rule has existed since the beginning of time. Of course, it is not the easiest thing. The names of the spellcasters are long and confusing, but even if you overcome difficulties, make a bet, most lose, and as a result, die. Only Anakin is not one of those people. It would be good to take advantage of the opportunity. The girl does not quite understand for what purposes her friend decided to make a deal. He has enough power and prestige. Apart from him, only 2 people know about the death of the Emperor. The owner of the Tower of Magicians must directly notify about the death and change of positions. Only now the puzzle has come together. In front of the heroine sits the very man who will become the one who will announce the future. Anakin wasn't lying when he said his friend was smart. A smile creeps in, but it's quickly removed. The emperor has died, and it is the brunette who is obliged to inform about this. He asks where Banus is in order to fulfill his duties. As it turned out, Willow ordered Belle to meet with the queen first, as if he was hinting at something. All this is obvious, and the heroine must understand that calling the magician by name is too easy. Smiling, the lady asks to make a bet. Turning away, the young man snorts. Such a person does not know the name of the owner of the tower. The maiden was silent, but very soon she called out the cherished name, thereby causing a violent reaction from the one sitting opposite. Extending her hand, the heroine again asks him to make a bet with her. This is the only thing she wants. The blonde had already thought everything through. If she won, she would become Empress and ascend the throne. For a long time, they had to remain silent while Luciano was in power and kept his sister locked up. The servants were suspected of the slightest violations. No one knew what was happening to them. After the wedding, the heroine was bullied by Banus. It was scary to even think about the Count's assassination attempts because it never ended. Luciano died without even leaving an heir. If the main character's husband had known, he would have seized the throne, and Aroa would have become the named Empress and would have suffered humiliation for the rest of her life. To avoid all the problems, Caisson plans to take over the throne. She will do it faster. Bel Carianas is the 28th master of the Tower of Magicians, the ruler of the territories of Fairhen, and is the son of the 26th mistress, Amaryllis. The child was born with the strongest magical abilities in the world. He truly had no equal. The mages may be vassals of the empire, but they do not show people what is hidden inside their heads. From birth, the young man was locked in his tower, into which even the king did not dare to poke his nose. He conscientiously fulfilled the role of messenger under a contract that had been concluded long ago. The girl remembers very well how many rumors were circulating around Bel. He entered the academy at the age of 15. Everyone called the man a genius who was able to study all sorts of subjects externally. Anakin mentioned his good qualities more than once, but also his bad ones. It's hard for the sorcerers without their powers, and he ruins everything by making a bet. Fortune takes away their abilities. As it turned out, the hero was excluded, but not everyone is clear for what reason. After training, Bel returned and fought with the owner of the tower. They say that in this duel, he managed to take power, which is why he became the new owner of the lands. The brunette scoffs. It seems that Her Majesty herself does not know what the price of such a deal is. A bet is a serious thing. It's strange, but there is not a drop of fear on the young lady's face since she knows the name. She must be aware of the rumors. The maiden offers her soul in exchange, and the hero, frozen in surprise, asks if Aroa knows the process of extraction. The magician takes half of a person's lifespan and creates a gem. The soul must be offered voluntarily. Every person has his own piece of magic, but the most power is stored in the souls associated with the name of the emperor. This suits Belia, but he hastens to disappoint her. Even if she gives her soul, the girl is unlikely to become an empress. All messengers announcing the death of the emperor are bound hand and foot. It is just as impossible to harm the new ruler as it is to kill him. The girl's offer was to his liking, but he couldn't make a bet. The young man doesn't get involved with those who can't pay. If you think about it, a man is not limited by time. He must report a death. In this case, it's true, the brunette was bored and would like to sort out his task as quickly as possible. By postponing for a month or two, they put the entire company at risk. People may find out from other sources. The lady asks for only a month, during which time nothing will be told to Banus. The plan that Her Majesty has made is based on divorcing her husband. If nothing happens within a month, the main character will give up half of her life, and if she wins, she will become the ruler of the country. Another condition is no less important. Bel will become the woman's messenger. He will have to carry out all the orders. The brunette has a lot of questions. If so, it would be better to get at least some benefit from the bet with the tower owner. No one will see how the queen's pride is broken. This is her choice. In order to get the soul, the magician is obliged to help the girl survive. Even doing all sorts of crazy things, the heroine will go to the very end. Bel lights up with joy. He was interested, so in the end they sign the agreement. On stage, the action takes place. The blonde screams at Nanisa, asking how she dares to seduce the king. The woman tries to restrain herself, but it is becoming increasingly difficult for her. There is nonsense there that is impossible to watch. The king put on a show in which the queen was mocked, and everyone gathered applauded on purpose. They have bad taste if everything is so terrible. I would like it to end soon. Count Estea only spoils everything. His desire to make his daughter the only queen exceeds everything else. An actor who plays on stage plays in all such performances. He is known throughout the empire because he is wonderful. His Majesty asks the man to come forward. He thanks him for the scene. He liked the sparkle in his eyes. The blonde turns to his wife, asking which scene she liked the most. It will be interesting if the maiden plays the role of the main queen. Turning around, the beauty asks for help from the wonderful actor. It's been a while since Her Majesty showed any initiative, so the man immediately calls the blonde closer. Noticing the fact that the heroine knows the actor's name, she asks him to come closer and does not stop until the very last moment. Smiling, Aroa begins her own performance, the kind of person she had pictured in her dreams. The voice won't stop, causing everyone else to freeze in horror at the potential threat to the marriage. According to the young lady, there is no one else who is worthy of the king's place. There is no one else for the throne. Rick is afraid of saying the wrong thing, and every time the words come with difficulty, the fact does not change. A woman places a beautiful purple emerald on a man's finger, a sign of love for Arnoa Cassion. The queen asks for forgiveness because she named her true name along with Irnia. Bowing her head, she thanks for the attention. It turned out that the ring was a real gift. She could keep it for herself. The blonde thanked him for the introduction. The color on the hand symbolizes the ruling family. No one except the king and queen dares to wear it. Aristocrats are whispering. Some believe that Her Majesty has a new object of desire. Larissa calms her lover, noting that Tabian did not put on the jewelry on purpose, but they do not listen to her. They only push her away. Rick is grabbed by the guard, and while he is making excuses, the husband gives his wife a nasty look. No one will dare touch the queen, so there will be no problems. Realizing that he can do nothing, His Majesty quickly runs away. Although Larissa is the blonde's first love, he is truly in love only with himself. He cannot stand ridicule. If the most important thing is his own feelings, then he will not be able to be the ruler of the empire. Arnoa hurt her husband's pride, but he definitely won't decide to get a divorce because of such a trifle. The next morning, all the newspapers wrote about the incident. Many thought that he looked like Binus. Cassian laughed. She herself was asked to take part in the play after it ended. As a wife, the girl is obliged to act accordingly. He forgot that the lady does not know how to be a queen, although she has lived in a castle all her life. Blue-eyed didn't forget anything. She forgot the moment. Yesterday, she should have gone crazy, just like in the play, and attacked Larissa. The man was about to scream, but his mistress asked him to calm down. Her Majesty was more emotional today. It would be better to have lunch together. Larissa holds out the meat skewered on a fork. It's her favorite dish and definitely worth trying. The couple enjoys the edel, forcing the third wheel to leave the dining room. Of course, they must be tasty because Arnoa put her whole soul into it. She still has a jar of the potion. Since childhood, the mother taught her daughter she had to find one devoted person in order to shift all the worries onto him. Anastasia confided that when a member of the imperial family has no money, they need to use something else. First, Arnoa must find someone who will help in all matters and will be more loyal than everyone else in the palace. It is important that the subject is smart. So far, this is the main criterion that is used. The woman advises to shift all worries onto such a person, but first make sure that he will never betray her. Mother was right. Belle realized that this was the reason Noah chose Dr. Roots. In order to survive in a foreign kingdom where there is danger on every corner, the lady at first did not understand who she should find. It was the doctor who saved the lady from poisoning. She took care of her health. She helped to restrain the enemies. Rudez is still just learning. The lady very luckily found herself in the right place at the right time. The royal physician does not need anything, but the miss had a different situation. The brunette also needed to support her mother. Money was handy for her. There was no way to refuse. The lady always said that she was ready to do anything for Her Majesty. In that case, these were not just empty words, but something more. Before this, a friend even created a contraceptive for Larissa. At least that was over. If Estea had any signs of pregnancy, the woman would have been worried, but this is not the case. They made a deal with the doctor. and she promised to give them a fake diagnosis in about 3 weeks. It turns out that Her Majesty is much smarter than she seems at first glance. Belle wants to know how she managed to hold out in this place for so long. Larissa's attempts to poison her lover's wife continually failed. Furshin immediately realized that not only the doctor had done a good job, but also the blonde. As soon as the conversation ended, the brunette said goodbye and jumped onto the balcony, promising that he would return later. Every time the young man comes when he is not expected and stays when asked to stay, even cats do not do that. Going out into the forest, the hero meets a raccoon. He arrived too late despite the request to move a little faster. The hand transforms into an ordinary human body. It was offensive for him to listen to the words. They hadn't seen each other for a very long time, and in the end, the meeting didn't go as planned. A servant brought a message from Ferchin. A boy from the Rupin family has developed symptoms that the magician knows about. During the man's absence, the queen managed to destroy an entire theater group. This is also news. The woman is much more dangerous than she seemed at first glance. But this, on the contrary, is a little exciting. His hand rummages in his pocket because he brought the promised artifact. He shows the player. As we know, it is Anakin who is the first to always get his hands on the best. A picture appeared, and then a recording of that very evening, and a smile involuntarily appeared on my face. Ruka saw what was happening with his own eyes, and can proudly say that it was not an accident. Her Majesty thought it all up. This girl proved in just one day that she would be a much better fit for the role of Empress than Luciano. The brunette points to the side, asking if everything is okay because mercenaries burst through the window. The maiden was reading a book when she heard a creak and thought the magician had returned, but she froze in horror when she saw figures in cloaks. Blue Eyes almost got hit on the head by the first attacker, but she was saved by Bel Carianas. He appeared at the most convenient moment and stopped everyone with magic. The brunette is angry that the guards have disappeared somewhere, although it can be noted that they were aware of everything. It is not clear whether the queen knows the truth or not, but the most important thing is that she will remain alive. The beauty backs away, moving right up against the wall. She trembles like an aspen leaf. At this rate, the heroine will never become a queen. Fear blocks the path for most. The young man carefully examines the lady's palm, but she waves it off. Rudez will help deal with the pain. In order not to keep him waiting, Bell uses healing magic. He doesn't know too much, but the basics are definitely imprinted on the subcortex. The brunette immediately realized that Estea and his manic desire to put his daughter on the throne were to blame for what happened. It would be easier to get rid of the king first. Because he is alive, Arnoa has too many problems. If you kill Banus, like Luciano and his brother, the problems will disappear in no time. The lady continues to refuse, not because of anxiety, but because the right to the inheritance will pass to her nephew. If His Majesty is killed, the blonde will become a widow for the rest of her life. It will be quite a spectacle when a boy who knows how to throw grandiose tantrums becomes emperor. Deciding that everything is still simple, Bell suggests getting rid of that 10-year-old, but his mouth is shut. The future empress asks not to touch anyone. There was no permission. Knowing the nature of the magician, the main character orders not to make unnecessary movements. The soul will be in exchange only after all the rules are followed. Since they had made a bet to play by Arnoa's rules, she decided it would be easier that way. Of course, the brunette nodded. He also had one condition. After saying this, he took a cat's eye out of his pocket. The item is being passed on because it is a paired artifact, and with its help, it will be possible to avoid problems. While one part is in one, the other can see and feel everything that happens to him. Hands gently touch her neck as the guy puts on the pendant. Her Majesty thanks her. There is a stomping and loud shouting in the corridor. Obviously, the guards only reacted now. The first to start moving was Arnoa, who pushes her friend forward. Either he will transform, or they will both be in trouble. The guard burst into the room, asking if the queen was okay. She stared intently, assessing the arrivals with an angry look. It is not clear how they managed to survive. The queen is being pursued by Luck. The man asks what happened. Screams were heard 10 minutes ago. The girl's expression doesn't change, saying that she feels better. But for some reason, the servants just can't cope with their duties. It's as if they don't know how. There is a rustling sound behind the door that makes one feel uneasy. The knights rush to the side to check for mercenaries. The beauty screams frantically, asking them not to go anywhere, But it's too late. A beautiful white kitten is sitting in the middle of the room. Roxanne stands in front of a man holding a man, a knife at his throat. The enemy's demands are simple, and they are going to get everything that was originally planned. To prevent the lady's fiancé from being killed, the commander had better once again discuss the terms of the peace treaty that were put forward not long ago. They were already fed up with the senseless slaughter. The woman listens to the words, but at the same time demonstratively ignores the meaning. She reaches for a bow and arrow, not answering questions about the meanings. Pulling the bowstring, the red-haired woman is silent. Obviously, she has decided to kill her future husband with her own hands, which already seems unthinkable to everyone gathered. The boy screams, begging him to think about a solution. Roxanne can't just take his life. Doing everything for this, the words don't have time to leave her mouth. The sharp tip pierces her throat. The princess is called crazy only because of the decisions she makes. Pointing her hand forward, the lady orders to kill all those who are on the battlefield. Another battle begins. Duke Aelier takes a sip of his whiskey and chuckles, finding it funny to hear that someone actually hoped that the offer of a peace treaty would be accepted so easily. The woman agrees. Nothing can be taken from fools. They are nothing special. The lady herself is completely fine. On the contrary, she is fine, because everything that is happening is probably in the order of things. The last thing the lady wants is a better and smarter groom than that idiot. The father nods. The wedding is a serious matter, and he will approach the matter with particular rigor. Careful preparation will not hurt. There is something more important now. The girl changes the topic to the imperial palace. They planned Luciano's fall. I would like to know how it all went. The man just wanted to start a conversation, but in the end, everything went down the drain. They were hoping that only the first-named king would die when they added the potion to the food. Arian also died. He didn't seem stupid enough to swallow poisoned food, but in fact, that's what happened. Unfortunately, the news is true. Now that a problem has arisen, it requires creative solutions. You can't make a ruler out of the king's narrow-minded brother. Roxanne can't calm down. Their plans were perfect, but they ruined everything. The Duke knows what a hot-tempered daughter he has and calmly asks her not to rush ahead. They still have a chance to get the best possible outcome. The one on the throne will be replaced by someone just as stupid. After thinking for just a second, the lady remembers that now the rights to the throne will pass to His Majesty Dehan, who did not show up in the empire, but was busy with his state. The emperor's daughter gave up all her privileges about 2 years ago because she didn't want to go near the castle, but now she will have to become the new empress. Even if that is the case, there is no need to worry, because the girl will never compare to the one who's now considered the best. She is just a weak and pampered girl who will be easily dealt with. The lady does not know what Aroa really is. It is impossible to predict how weak the girl is, as the father himself says. Sometimes people only at first glance seem nice, like harmless sheep. The whole situation is far from simple. Roxana is the daughter of Aelier. The blood of His Majesty the Emperor flows in her. She is the most excellent in the whole wide world. Therefore, she will become the new queen. Direct kinship is not important for inheritance. The Duke's line was originally much more noble than the imperial one. It is not comparable to anyone else. The throne, which his lordship failed to obtain, falls into the hands of his daughter. From her very birth, he was sure that the girl was special. She had a special nature. The tower's owner had to deliver the message immediately because he was the first to know everything, and the king of Dehan would soon learn the news. Perhaps the blonde already knows. He just prefers to remain silent for a while. He can't even imagine how hard it is to sit on the throne. The game is just beginning. Roxana smiles. We need to make that fool understand what the difference is between a king and an emperor. He still thinks that he will be fine. The real power is with the Duke and his family. The aristocrats are once again discussing the fact that Her Majesty has developed feelings for Rick. She even gave him the ring symbolizing the kingdom and was not ashamed. One of the maids laughs subduedly, although deep down she doesn't understand if it was true. Who knew what emotions were hidden behind the woman's haughty face? She remained silent all this time. Lissa, sitting nearby, notes that this is unrealistic. Apparently, the queen still hasn't understood how to behave in Dehan. Training takes more time. As maids, they will do more. The conversation is interrupted. Estea angrily asks who entered her greenhouse and freezes, noticing the blonde. In the absence of the heroine, they enjoyed tea. Her Majesty came anyway. She had her own business, but she set aside time. The blue-eyed one did not bother to warn and opened the door with her own hands, too. Something must have happened. The blonde received an invitation, but the door was locked. She had to open it herself. Larissa laughs. That's right. But she doesn't know how to get out of it if her mother is angry. The Countess herself has the right to think about what to do with the servants who, instead of doing their work, sit in the garden wiping their skirts on chairs. Larissa's gloomy face makes it clear that the joke didn't count. She is her father's daughter. She continues to repeat the same thing over and over again. This is the order of things. Count Estea staged only one play each time, which he sponsored, and his attempts to get rid of Her Majesty were also absolutely no different from each other. Risa's plans for the tea ceremony were the same. She called Aroa, who had no friends, treated her to strange food, and pointed out all the shortcomings. The final finishing touch was always dresses that were out of fashion, all done with the aim of making fun of a silly queen like her. Larissa smiles, asking if Casion had previously worn the clothes given to her by Larissa. Before this, there had always been efforts to find suitable outfits, but obviously something was not to her liking. Her Majesty turns up her nose. She doesn't want to wear what was given to her. This is the only reason. Pretending to groan, the woman asks if it's true that her friend didn't like anything. Instead of keeping silent as usual, the blonde snorts. It's true, and it seems that a sense of style will never appear again. It has long been lost. The beauty could accept this fact just by looking at her wonderful dress. Examining her food, the lady clarifies what they added to her this time: poison or venom. The gaze turns to the empty mug that stands on the table. The servants who forgot to pour tea should lose either their hands or their positions. The brunette asks Her Majesty not to be angry. Getting up from her seat, she carefully takes the teapot. If the girl drinks the aromatic drink, the mood will immediately improve. The color of the drink has changed. The cup has been smeared with something. Her lips begin to burn as soon as the heroine takes one sip. The maids, as if adding fuel to the fire, notice that the tea is sweet. Only the abnormal like this horrible drink if they like it. It can be said with certainty that it can't get any worse. For them, everything is already lost. Larissa takes her tea and tries not to stray from the path. She also holds her chin proudly. The woman has become too perceptive lately. The king only loves the smart ones. The dear maid takes care of Her Highness. Kindness must be repaid. Bending over the girl, Aroa grabs her cheeks with his hand. The demands are not that harsh. The heroine expects to take a sip of a tasty drink, and after that she promises that everything will end quickly, without causing harm to health. After a flood of liquid, the lady finally breaks free. She coughs and screams for salvation. Because it became too hot in her mouth, her plan turned against her. Having asked for water, the heroine receives a mug from the princess, into which she poured tea again. At first, the maiden did not even notice that something was wrong, but then it became clear. The cup breaks when the young lady accidentally drops it. The blonde thought that the girl liked the drink, so she pretends not to know anything. The door suddenly opens and the countess runs in. She immediately runs to Larissa to check what happened to her. Estea listens to her crying. She doesn't understand. Hugging her daughter, the woman again asks who brought the girl to such a state, and she points to Her Majesty, standing serenely a few steps away. It is immediately obvious what the queen is allowing herself. She simply treated the maid to delicious tea, because this is the reward that she deserved more than anyone else gathered. This time the girl will dot all the I's, the interlocutor continues to shout, showing not to lie because everyone saw how she forced Larissa to drink tea by force. This is unacceptable. It is impossible to be so cruel. A member of the imperial family should be ashamed. Since a mistake was made, then it will have to be punished, doing it correctly. Taking out a fan, the woman asks to give her palms. She also does the same thing every time. Their whole family is similar, but this time the course of events will be changed. An object is already raised above her hands, preparing to cause pain, but at the last moment the blonde steps back. Her companion's wrist turns red and she screams. The beauty smiles. It is obvious that the lady has completely miscalculated her strength. Trying to prove her case, Estea squeals something about staged events. In 2 years, the queen has not learned anything. She's not going to argue. So she nods. Everything is exactly as the maid said. She would like to know much more. Still, there is something that the heroine remembered. The main one, that is, Banis's wife, should be in charge of the kingdom's economy. She should fire and hire workers. The conversation went off track. Now everything is different. The woman jumps up, promises that she will immediately report to His Majesty. He will find a way to deal with the rebellious nobility. The blonde sees no need to go to his chambers. The work is over for today, just like it is for tomorrow, because the countess has just been fired. It is customary to fire incompetent workers. This is how business is conducted in any normal country. It turns out that Estea received a high salary, but in 2 years she still did not teach anything. Her Majesty is to blame for this situation. Apparently, she does not think so. If no one taught her how not to become a cruel person, it was a forced measure because of society. A teacher has a duty to educate his protege. A lady who has not been taught anything should get ready and leave as soon as possible, but before that, finish what she started. Grabbing another mug of unfinished tea, the heroine begins to pour the liquid on Larissa's head. She fully enjoyed the tea ceremony, and her smile does not fade. While the girl asks her mother to bring her some water, the other maids of honor stand silently and look away. In front of them is not the queen everyone knew. She seems to have gone mad. The man watches his friend through his cat's eye and can't help but laugh. When he sees what she did, Ruka asks her to be a little quieter so she won't be heard. Since they are on the territory of the royal palace, the magic's limit has been reduced, and the boy cannot completely hide their voices from outsiders. I like the training, and it's not that something went wrong. The tea ceremony was incredibly funny. The servant didn't see it, so he doesn't understand. He frowned. The magician himself didn't show him anything. The blonde turned out to be quite an interesting girl. With such a character, it's impossible to imagine how she managed to restrain herself for so long, trying to remain in the shadows. The woman finally fought back and was sincere in her actions, trying not to justify it. People die from sincerity just as much as from lies. It is like poison. Whoever says that there is no way out will be considered stupid. Her Majesty has a plan of action, and victory will most likely be hers. Ruka listened calmly until the moment came to ask what benefit the man would gain. He probably wanted to win the bet and take the Empress's soul. The brunette is not going to answer the questions posed. The acquaintance has become more talkative. This means that they are no longer on the same path. It is better to get away as far as possible. As long as nothing happens, his lordship will continue to watch everything that happens. This time the queen will do something new. At least that's what one would like to hope for. Larissa almost immediately ran back to her chambers and fell on the bed, bursting into bitter tears. Banis tries to calm her down, but nothing helps. The lady believes that the future husband is obliged to be angry at the one who did the most terrible thing to the future queen, immediately flaring up with anger. The blonde nods actively because it is so. The feelings should be the same as before, but if so, it is better to get rid of Arnoa, who stood in the way. The blonde had already said that his first and last love was Estea. The only problem is that Noah is a member of the imperial family. It is not so easy to divorce her. Fate is too cruel to the couple. The Lord tests the sincerity of feelings because this game cannot be called anything else. They themselves do not understand how this applies to them at all. Lowering her sad gaze, Larissa imagined that Her Majesty would suddenly let her wife get away with everything. She should get what she deserved, exactly in a way she didn't expect. Of course, it is impossible to just leave the pranks alone. After what Her Majesty has done, at the upcoming Spirit Festival, she will understand what a serious mistake she has made. The smile seems vile. The darling promises that he will do everything to make the party a spectacle worthy of the woman sitting in front of him. They will both have fun. The queen appeared, as usual, the very last one. Entering the hall, she collected a lot of glances, but everyone did nothing but discuss her old-fashioned dress. The outfit was popular more than a century ago. They say that the king himself chose this dress. The guests chatted completely indecently, recalling the antics at the tea ceremony. The first song is over, the second one is starting, and applause is heard all around for the most wonderful couple that could possibly exist. We are talking about Larissa and Banis. Apparently, they were made for each other. The young man believes that the lady dances superbly. No one else could do it. all thanks to the fact that the teacher and partner was the king. Arnoa's voice is heard, greeting His Majesty from behind. The dress suits her. The stern queen deserves to be dressed in such strict tones. Estea also laughs when she notices how much the fake purple pearls on her hem suit the blonde. She will have to endure it. Nothing can be done. The girl does this for a reason. She wants Belle to sit and watch the situation. She knows that right now he is also watching the events. Before that, about 2 days ago, the magician had sneaked into Arnoa's chambers. Of course, he had taken the form of a kitten. The purpose of his visit was the necklace. He said that it was better not to take it off. If the lady really wants to be protected until the end of their bet, she should never take off the pendant that was given to her. Not long ago, there is nothing to worry about. Her Majesty only took it off to change her clothes. The brunette can't help but comment on the ugly dress that is currently on her body. It doesn't look like something worthy of someone who, after all, rules the state. Blue-eyed waves it off. She knows she looks ridiculous. This is her costume for the Spirit Festival. Banus chose it himself, telling his wife to dress like her grandmother, who died 100 years ago. There are other clothes, of course, but nothing normal will suit the Mad Queen. There's no point in worrying about her dignity. The magician does not understand why her friend insults herself like that. In fact, she is far from out of her mind. One could say that everything is completely fine with her. The girl does not understand how this happens and decides to remind him of what she did in the past, that the king had a mistress and his wife called the actor handsome can be called madness. In the same way, Her Majesty punished a servant who had insulted her dignity and fired a teacher who had not fulfilled any of his duties. For all this, the girl was humiliated. This can be called insanity, but it seems that only the magician himself does not think so. It is normal that people experience a sense of injustice. This sometimes happens. When they are together, Belle no longer wants to listen to words about how crazy Her Majesty is. It seemed like everyone in the tower was emotionless. Obviously, he is different. The brunette decides to change the subject and, of course, asks who the invitations were given to. Apparently, only aristocrats who have at least some influence in general will arrive. Trying to get the paper from the young man will not work, and he has already given up because he does not belong to the categories of guests. Instead, he asked to take the rose that is in the vase. The blonde involuntarily raised an eyebrow. If his lordship needed a flower so much, he could go to the garden and pick one from any bush. They would be much better and fresher there. From the very first word, the guy starts to be stubborn. He wants exactly what he sees in front of him. Of course, the lady does not understand what he saw, but he cannot refuse. The girl is thinking about the magician and his words when she is distracted by Banus. It is already quite late, and he seems to have already decided on a partner for the evening, so there is nothing more to wait for. The woman doesn't mind being alone. She is interrupted mid-sentence, showing how unimportant her position is. Someone else can be found for that evening. A marquis appeared before the heroine. He is a distant relative of the king. They say that this man is ready to do anything to achieve what he wants. Therefore, he is famous for his debauchery. Bowing his head and smiling roughly, the blonde assures that it is an honor for him to become Arnoa's new partner, but she alone is not at all happy with this turn of events. Rumors began to spread throughout the hall, but nothing changed. The queen simply forced His Majesty to find himself a more sensitive partner in the person of Larissa. Apparently, words have no weight. Bane suggests that the lady needs to loosen up. No one has ever been able to slip away just like that, even such closed-off individuals. The hero speaks of Her Majesty and gradually leans closer, placing his fingers on her cheek, not intending to remain silent. She grabs her companion by the hair and pulls him back with all her might. There is nothing difficult in leaving the guy alone. A brat like him cannot even be called a semblance of a man. Origin in this case does not matter at all. The Marquise was unlucky. The queen has been a real scoundrel lately. She will not tolerate bad treatment of her person under any pretext. As the acquaintance fell to the floor, the king runs forward, menacingly asking what they were doing to his guest. It was the man who first began to allow himself too much. It was obviously a joke. The reaction was too strong, and it shouldn't be like that. The girl snorts. She doesn't feel guilty, but if that's what they want, they can even punish her. With enough audacity to continue laughing, Aroa began to forget herself, relying too much on her imperial family. They will see who will laugh last. The lady does not immediately understand what is going on, because she does not see what is happening on the balcony behind her. It turned out that there were maids upstairs with a bucket of ice water ready. They were acting childishly, but there was no point in it. It was better to play along. There was no need for more problems. To confirm her madness, the beauty will allow her husband's plan to come true. She was already preparing to receive water, but then someone closed it. The face of the one who appeared nearby in time is hidden by a mask, but this does not prevent the blonde from understanding that the owner of the magic tower stands in front of her. He is smiling calmly. Banis starts to rage, asking how anyone dares to touch the queen with their hands. In reality, he is more worried about his failed plan. Bell is in control of the situation as best he can. He just helped his partner and doesn't want to be misunderstood, but everything should be wonderful at this party. Bowing in a welcoming gesture, the magician gently kisses the queen's hand. Asking for forgiveness for his lateness, they will go to the dance floor together, even if it is unexpected. The lady tries to say something, but nothing works. He has a gift, or rather that same rose, which now also changes its color. Accepting the flower, the heroine freezes, magic happens, the outfit is transformed in a second, now it is in beautiful yellow shades. Those gathered cannot contain their admiration, because just recently there was a completely different person in front of them. Sometimes the dress plays too big a role. Trying to speak as quietly as possible, the blonde asks what it's called. It's forbidden to use magic, but Belle didn't do anything. The artifact helped him. The woman wants her friend to leave right now, but he, ignoring her words, pulls her closer, repeating again that he has already promised to walk her home and even dance a little. Finally, when it was all over, the couple found themselves in the garden. The lady still doesn't understand why they helped her. She herself asked for protection while they had a bet. There was no connection found between the queen simply being doused with water. The blue-eyed one does not believe that her dignity would be seriously affected. Nothing worse could happen. With the help of Binus's antics, the lady could have shown herself to be even crazier. Her wishes did not match reality, and in the end, everything was ruined. The blue-eyed girl thought before saying anything. It seemed like they were trying to stop her from getting a divorce. This was beyond any bounds. If such were her thoughts, the magician would not object. That's the thing about Belle. He's different from the rest, and fortunately, it will always be that way. Yet, despite what happened, he was the only one who stood up for Her Majesty. Banus is sitting in his office, but as usual, he is angry. The girl has definitely gone crazy. He calls the servant because he wants to find out something. It will not take much time. The brunette is asked what he thinks about the queen. A smile appears on his face. Because the girl is incredibly beautiful and kind, there are no others like her anywhere. Without losing his temper, the protagonist explains that he's talking about her behavior in general. Aroa has no right to accept another man's proposal in front of her living husband. Marquis Bane acted on the orders of His Majesty, but we're talking about someone else now. Since the young man hid his face behind a mask, it means he looks terrible. They say that the one who danced with the queen is Count Lurk. For the blonde, this sounds more like a fairy tale, because he studied with that man and has known him since he was in diapers. It's all true, but something else also happened. That man literally the day before bought all the lands of Lurk, along with the title, which he appropriated for himself. The fourth largest share of Dehan was sold, and the king didn't even know about it. The Empress was involved in this matter, as if she did it on purpose. The blonde began to think about all the possible options for such behavior. Most likely, jealousy was the cause. He had no other options left. The girl wants to make His Majesty jealous. Since she's unable to harm Lissa, she had to find another way, more effective than the previous one. Now, the king is sure that what happened at the celebration is similar to what happened in the theater with that actor. Her Majesty is a pathetic person, since she acted like that. The conversation is interrupted by a knock. A servant bursts through the door, bringing with him a letter. Kesman's carrier pigeon arrived half an hour ago. It was intended for Dehan. The Empire is at war with that country. It seems that they had previously sent their soldiers there, whom the Duke had requested for help. They did not have enough people to fight. The letter states that Aelier is going to form a special squad, selecting only people from the country's team. After these words, real horror is displayed on his face. The army personally formed by the Duke differs in its strength. In fact, that person, as commander-in-chief, gets rid of all people who are not pleasing to him, doing this with particular cruelty. Asking again, the blonde tries to make sure that he didn't misheard. He would like what was said to be untrue. He feels sorry to give up his best fighters. Perhaps everything is happening because of the queen. The servant also had such thoughts. If you think about it, then it is difficult to find other reasons for such an angry attitude towards the state. Although she and Luciano are not on the best terms, the heroine still belongs to the emperor's family, and this has its own weight. After 2 years of marriage, the main one began to worry that Aroa was not receiving love. The girl always wanted only a good life for herself, and now she is constantly suffering. Rumors have probably already reached the castle. His Majesty exhales. He already understood that there was only one way out. The hero would personally go and take care of everything so that there were no gaps. The servants began preparations sitting at the table. The blonde asks what they are doing to her. The scent of roses in her hair is good. Larissa uses it every day. Everything is done according to the king's orders. He asks to apply the scent that his beloved uses because this scent is the best. The hand is shown in a warning gesture. If the maid uses the bottle, something will be done to her. This time it is the queen's order. The maid decides to leave as quickly as possible, leaving the lady alone with her thoughts. She doesn't like being dressed like a doll. She looks like Estea. The door opened and Durkan appeared on the threshold, wearing only a robe that barely covered his body, and a rose in his teeth, also like a sign. The girl did not understand why he came to her bedroom, and in such a state, she confidently says that such behavior is generally indecent. Today, the hero gives his wife what she's wanted for so long. All this time, the lady was jealous, therefore she offended Larissa and had fun with another man. What the blue-eyed man is going to give is all of himself. He has long since figured out what the matter is, and he is not going to put off their important matter any longer. Pushing away from the wall, the lady tries to leave. She doesn't want anything. Not understanding how this is possible, the young man playfully reminds that today they must conceive an heir. It's too late to pretend to be noble. There's nothing wrong with the queen wanting a husband. No, at that moment a cat jumps out of the window and scratches her face with all its might. The nasty animal hurt his majesty, making him scream. The blonde quietly calls Snowball to her, reminding him that behaving this way is not the best idea. His Majesty listens attentively. If the girl sees such disgusting behavior even once more, he will do the same as he did with Marquis Ban. The blonde is directly threatening to hit him in the leg, or perhaps do something worse. They can check right now because it won't be a problem. The screams were too loud. Accusations of madness were heard even after the man ran away. The girl asks the animal to turn back into a human. The beauty assured him that everything would be fine now. The brunette had finally regained his magical form, but they found themselves pressed too close to each other. The man asked to be put down on the floor first, but since they didn't listen to him, there was nothing more to say. The warning had been given literally a second ago. In any case, something else is important now. The queen does not understand why it was necessary to attack Banus. It has already been said many times that it is wrong to kill, and even more so to cause harm. The young man looks serene. He just touched up his face a little. Of course, he had no desire to spoil anything. That was not on the list. Since you can't use your magic to harm, you have to try to find a way out. The hero is pleased with how creatively he approached the issue. The girl is silent, but does not hold back from asking why all this is being done. The magician, on the contrary, does not need this divorce. He must interfere in every possible way. The state changes, the brunette behaves as if he no longer wants to receive the soul of the future empress. Rumor said that the tower's owner was fickle. Belle only did what she wanted at that very second, and her mood changed even more. Furchin wanted to bite the king, so he did just that. He thinks he did the best he could by removing the brat from the queen's chambers. If only his hands weren't tied by the contract with the imperial family, then Banus would have faced death. He could be considered very lucky. In the forest, as usual, a hunt is taking place. A blond man runs after a raccoon, which once again masterfully dodges all the arrows fired at him. The knight standing behind assures that everything is fine. Not everyone can catch such a fast beast on their own. There's no point in getting upset. The animal is much more agile than a boar or a bear, and by letting it go again, His Majesty loses nothing. After all, he did his best. The hero's arrows have run out, and he can't continue hunting. The servant offers to give him the beast he caught, but instead of agreeing, he gets a scold in. Banus can't calm down. That cat, that raccoon, everyone behaves as if they are deliberately mocking, considering this a completely normal order of things, so nothing has changed. Everything didn't go according to plan, and Larissa, having learned that her future husband went to Arnoa's bedroom, got angry and burst into tears, which made her head spin. There are even more problems with his wife. It would be nice to conceive an heir with imperial blood in his veins, but in the end, the girl refused in a rude manner, forcing him to run away. It is also understandable why there is no news from Caisson, since they were never really together. But it is not clear what the problem is with Larissa. She should have become pregnant by now. The problem is with the king, but he doesn't want to admit it. Someone hits his leg with a tail. It turns out that it's that raccoon again, who this time took the potion with him. The queen sees what is happening, although she is far away. She cannot contain her laughter. Estea appears nearby. She guessed that the lady is hunting for the first time. The concubine herself often spent time with His Majesty, so everything that was happening was not new to her, but rather could be attributed to something similar to routine. The lady waves it off, but notes that she hunted both in the fortress and in the duchy. She even knows how to use a bow, no matter how surprised Larissa is. For the acquaintance, this information means nothing. She was trained by the ruler long before the arrival of Arnoa, who used to sit in the tower. Blue-eyed, doesn't care how close the girl is to Banus. She's trying to bite harder after the news that the husband was in his wife's bedroom. The heroine is not going to tolerate such behavior. Since she did not have another mentor, obviously she was unable to learn anything, because the king is among the losers. Since the best couldn't catch an ordinary raccoon, things in the kingdom are not going as they should be, and it won't end well, that's for sure. The queen acts as if her skills are better than other people's. Larissa suggests a competition to show who is the best at hunting. Estea has won more than once, even against the royal guard. She doesn't care how good Arnoa is at archery. She won't win anyway. The girl nods, chuckling. The proposal is interesting, but we need to decide on the targets we will shoot at. Since today is a hunting day, the assessment will be based on the number of game killed. The knight standing behind reminds them that they will be leaving soon. No luck. Even if we start now, there's not enough time. Estea herself recently went with the guards and already caught a rabbit. The girl froze in slight confusion. When she realized her mistakes, she seemed not to even guess about the seriousness of what was happening when she caught the animals in someone else's trap. Finding herself in a difficult situation, handed over the Empress, accusing her of being unable to personally cope with the situation, sounded cold but confident. Larissa looks back in panic. Her voice sounds desperate, as if she is trying to justify herself. "What difference does it make?" she exclaims. Her eyes are burning with determination. For her, the main thing now is to catch the animal. The rest of the details do not matter because they are on a hunt where everyone is the same. Although the interlocutor looks at her reaction with distrust, slightly raising an eyebrow, trying to express even more emotion. Smiling defiantly, the beauty tries to pretend otherwise. Her gaze is full of confidence. She throws down a challenge. If the opponent is so capable, let her prove it by catching something more serious than a rabbit. Her voice sounds mocking, but at the same time, there is a hidden threat in it. It is clearly read that she thinks that such a thing is unrealistic for such a simpleton as the queen, to catch a target with one shot. Then the abilities will be recognized. Of course, the Empress is not going to give in so easily either. Giving in to the one she hates with all her heart, the maiden stands with her head held high, her voice full of contempt and irony, asking if her interlocutor really thinks that she cares about some kind of confession. In response, she hears a call to apologize for her ignorance, but inside, the woman is seething, thinking why she suddenly needs to ask for forgiveness from someone who is worthless. Estea's gaze is tense. Thoughts are racing through her head. She needs to figure out how to respond better, get out of the situation, and get out of the situation. Now is the most important thing. She is sure that her rival does not want to lose and is certainly bluffing. The one who has been hiding for 2 years without showing herself definitely cannot be better. Anger and doubt are boiling inside, which are intertwined with the desire to prove her superiority. Her head will be bowed. Finally, looking down, the girl smirks. Of course, a great idea came to mind. Now Aroa will find out everything. The lady declares that if she wins, then her opponent will have to apologize to her. There is a challenge in the words, especially when she mentions the reason, an apology for what was done to her mother, and for the pain caused to herself. She's clearly determined to get what she wants. With a blazing blush on her cheeks, the lady looks back excitedly as she is ordered to go into the forest and catch something. Next to her, a young man offers her a hunting contest. He looks worried about the squabble that has broken out, but adds uncertainly that it could happen next month. If she agrees, she will have to wait. The pink-haired girl with a sly smile confidently declares not to worry because she is brave enough to go into the forest alone. Nothing will happen there. She will come out alive. The challenge sounds even more bold when she asks if her opponent is really afraid. It was worth offering to surrender right now, because this is not the first time she loses to her, so there's no point in embarrassing herself. Stepping forward, the blonde raises her bow and pulls the string. There's no need to go to the other side of the thicket. She calmly takes out her weapon, preparing for action. In front of her eyes, there's a large enough target for her to concentrate, while her remark sounds caustic. It is not nice to delay others, hinting at the sluggishness of those around her. Realizing that things are not going as planned and the provocation, on the contrary, pushed the Empress to crazy actions, the lady backs away and screams in fear, asking what is happening, her voice trembling with bewilderment. In response, another person holding a bow at the ready answers with a grin that she just went hunting. Her calm confidence contrasts with the panic unfolding before her. Of course, all this does not matter. The girl clasps her hands in confusion, her voice trembling with fear and indignation. She does not believe that they can harm her, confident that the king will not leave it without consequences, because he cares a lot about the woman he loves very much. In response, her opponent with a grin notes the fear of the majesty, clearly enjoying the situation. She is not going to retreat just like that. With a slight grin on her face, Arnoa sarcastically replies that she also really hopes that that same idiot will not leave all this just like that. On the contrary, it will not do her any good to professionally organize a divorce that will be ideal. Her look is full of irony, and the tone of her voice sounds mocking, as if she already anticipates how her interlocutor will be confused by these words. In an attempt to back away, the lady accidentally falls to the ground. As she tripped over a stone, she looks embarrassed and confused. In a panic, the beauty admits that she is not a warrior or a knight and does not understand how she can cope with hunting in the forest alone. Meanwhile, the Empress, without ceasing to smile, notes that if you cannot catch an animal in the thicket, it is worth aiming at the nearest one. There's no point in overexerting yourself. There is nowhere else to run. She can't climb up, partly because of her paralyzed limbs, which stopped obeying after an attack of fear. The girl is in a panic. Her thoughts are immersed. She understands that the attacks of madness that she observed before are repeated. The same thing happened at that tea party. At this time, the guards are desperately trying to calm her down, asking her not to panic. Their voices are full of anxiety because the situation is getting out of control. Diva still thinks that they should help her. She looks at the guards asking something. It's hard for her to understand what kind of image this is. Arnoa shouts for everyone to shut up. They're just getting in the way. A warning escapes her lips. She's about to shoot and has already aimed again. Larissa, sitting opposite, screams and covers her face with her hands. In anticipation of pain, she had to accept that no one will help. The arrow flies. It is mad and hits the target, piercing the boar, which instantly falls. Those around look at it in surprise, not believing their eyes. The lady falls to her knees, shocked. For some reason, she was ready for something else. Meanwhile, the future Empress mockingly remarks that the animal is larger than the rabbit they talked about earlier. Banis's mistress screams indignantly, wondering what is going on here, her voice full of indignation. It was too dangerous. The arrow could have missed the target, making everything even worse. Kaizen only smirks, not attaching any importance to the words, and calmly reminds that she, by the way, won a victory, enjoying her triumph. After her words completely saturated with toxicity, the girl leans forward, her gaze full of cold contempt, demanding that the girl keep her promise. Squeezing her chin with her hand, she forces her to look straight into the eyes, not allowing her to turn away in the other direction. Feeling an internal protest, she understands that there is no way out. An apology is inevitable, as she promised. The hand is still on her cheek. Larissa is struggling to hold back her tears, realizing her helplessness. The situation has worsened progressively. Her voice is shaking when she finally admits that she was wrong, and with an effort asks for forgiveness exactly as she promised. Those around her, seeing this, exclaim, calling on her to come to her senses. But the tension does not ease. The situation is tense. A smile is frozen on her face, which this time cannot be removed. The doctor, sitting next to the queen, anxiously tries to figure out the situation. Binus runs into the room. He looks at her with concern, and the woman on the bed holds her hand to her face, trying to come to her senses after what happened. And sobs, stretching her hands forward, the blonde exclaims with fear and excitement, asking what Aroa did again. The main one, hugging his pink-haired lover, feels a mixture of irritation and bewilderment. He can hardly contain his anger when he is told that she only laughed when she saw her friend lose consciousness, and then turned around to walk away. Inside, his thoughts are boiling. Why does his wife, always calm and quiet, behave as if she were another person? The guy is still trying to stay calm. It's quite difficult for him. He turns away from the doctor present, who asks a question, as it seems addressed to his future wife, Miss Rudy's. Without hesitation, asks a direct and delicate question concerning women's health she is interested in. When was the last menstruation? Larissa felt awkward about the question because her delay had already lasted for half a month. With emotions in her eyes, she asked what this could mean. The brunette looked at her with a serious face and asked how she had been feeling lately. Finally, the woman admitted that she felt sick and periodically dizzy. These were the symptoms that prevented her from living. The news that seemed to have been waiting for an eternity is heard. A man with golden hair stands with a stunned expression on his face, holding Larissa in his arms. It turns out that his woman is pregnant. His face expresses shock. He repeats, trying to understand that she is carrying his child under her heart. The other lady also looks surprised and confused. She smiles. The main character lies on the bed, clinging to her companion. Her face expresses a mixture of happiness and fatigue. Miss Roods strongly recommends complete rest because now she is carrying the heir to the kingdom. She needs to take care of him, preferably properly. The words about the child fill her with joy, realizing the greatness of her new role. Now, Aroa will change his mind and will know where her place is. The golden red-haired man with a shining smile turns away. Of course, he can't tell what's going on in his head. However, there flashes a thought about why he once doubted himself, because he never had problems with bed affairs. The girl, all in emotions. But tears begin to well up in her eyes. Only she knows what she's going to do. Understanding came too early, but immediately after the woman's words, everything came back even more. Quite recently, that same incident with the bow happened. When the blonde aimed at the queen, she scared her very much, almost to death, especially when she released the arrow. The beauty is afraid that she could lose the baby. She's very lucky that it ended well. It is simply impossible to react calmly. His opinion has changed. Even if the king also hated Aroa before, anger is hidden behind. A storm is raging in his thoughts. He understands that the girl is right. If something had gone wrong, Larissa could have lost her fruit due to fear or stress. He cannot bear to realize that she is acting so boldly and recklessly, as if she had completely lost her mind, and now she behaves as she pleases. His heart was filled with resentment, which mixed with other feelings. He remembered every insult, every threat that the Empress had thrown at him, calling him a vile pervert and threatening to deprive him of his dignity. It was offensive, but not so much that he would behave the opposite. Now the beauty had gotten to their child. This was the last straw. He would no longer be able to forgive, which meant it would end badly. The first thing the hero does is gather the knights, who immediately came at the first call. He bursts into the room, his voice full of anger and indignation. The man shouts that he can no longer stand it and knows about all the atrocities of his wife, ordering to immediately lock the queen in her room, not to let her out under any circumstances. His patience has snapped, and now his determination is inevitable. The blonde silently listens to the accusations. She does not move. A smile appears on his face. It means that the end has obviously come. This is exactly true. His anger is overflowing. He continues to give orders, this time even more cruel. No one dares to visit her. No one owes her any food or water, even if this person is close to her highness. His face is distorted with rage. His eyes sparkle with a crazy decision. Now the power shows that the order is unconditionally carried out. The king is not going to move, he continues to scream, creating even more noise. The thoughts are terrible, they are cold. Very soon the girl will be forced to beg for mercy, because no person can refuse food. Starvation is not an option for her. The knight threw the blonde into the room, not caring at all that she hit the floor. Remaining in place, the young man asks the servants if they lock the doors. He turns and sternly says that if the queen says anything, the servants are obliged to immediately report to him. Instead of helping her get out or giving her water, there will be punishment for failure to comply. The brunette nervously agrees, trying to hide her fear of his rage. She did not argue. The imagination is immediately busy. A picture is displayed there that makes the soul feel good. The girl will probably lose a lot of weight. There will be sadness and a request for mercy in her eyes, and this is the young man's most cherished desire. The blonde must regret all her committed atrocities that were committed not so long ago. In order to make sure that the lady was really locked up, she grabs the iron bars with her hands. It's not that simple. It doesn't seem like they can really think that she will sit and starve. After the order that Banus gave, her eyes are full of determination. She realizes that she does not intend to sit silently and suffer. Her gaze is full of firmness. There is a plan for revenge and decisive action ahead. That's exactly what she will have to do. A lady, with a serious and thoughtful expression on her face, writes something on a piece of paper. Sitting at a massive table, she went there almost immediately after the door closed. She has a pen slowly moving across the surface as if each word has great importance. Having finished, she puts the letter down and then picks up a gold pendant, looking at it intently. Finally, she sees how everything around begins to glow. The woman sitting at the table with a delicious feast in front of her looks pleased. She holds a piece of bread, which she dips into the soup. The taste is too wonderful. Feeling the pleasure of the food, she manages to smile, however. She's surprised by the abundance of dishes, and she wonders why such a luxurious feast was arranged when she asked for only a piece of bread. The young man does not cease to amaze. Bell is standing next to him. He moved towards the table in literally a second. He immediately hands the woman a piece of food on a fork. His expression is calm, but there is severity in his voice. He says that he will not allow her to die of hunger, especially since she herself threatened that she would not give up her soul if the table was not set for her, considering that the poor health of the future Empress will not benefit anyone. The blonde turns away. It's obvious that she's been outplayed. Her words have been used against her. She squints and speaks with a slapp mockery. She's offered dessert since everything has already been eaten. But doubt flashes through her thoughts. This is too much food for one. After this, it can be even worse than not eating. The guy still doesn't move aside. He crossed his arms on his chest, calmly and confidently answers her that recently he is interested in such things as what girls like. Initially, the lady wanted to tease him, but in the end, she received an answer that is completely consistent. She looks at him in surprise, slightly raising her eyes, because the man looks too confident. Arnoa doesn't even think about moving. She spears another piece of food on her fork, which instantly melts in her mouth. The beauty calmly closes her eyes, enjoying the moment, and says that if someone sees her now, they will think that she is pregnant just because of such a good attitude towards her person. She notes that Larissa is not treated like that, considering that she is just carrying Durkan's child. Bell chuckles. He was thinking whether it was worth explaining the situation and decided pretty quickly that it would be so. It turned out that Binus's future wife had a false pregnancy. He is confident in his words because there is living confirmation of this. Dr. Rudas herself spoke about it. Obviously, the lady found out everything after the first examination, but has not yet told the truth. The girl sitting on the bed tiredly covers her face with her hand. She is already moved. Her thoughts are confused, but it is much easier to understand that problems with the cycle, slight ailments, and even fatigue, all this was not true. Larissa asked the doctor to lie that what was happening to her was related to pregnancy, when as a whole she feels great. The woman looks away. Her face expresses a mixture of feelings. They are understandable, but not to everyone. All her plans are so carefully thought out, they pierce her consciousness, which makes her feel good. She understands that she really was able to create an ideal reason for divorce despite all the expectations of those around her. This is exactly how she imagined everything from the very beginning. All that remains is to complete the plan and finally become free. The girl is asked if the door will be closed for some time and how long it will last. She briefly answered that it is true. He was confident in his actions and therefore moves forward, making sure that his plan works. He nods. Of course, the girlfriend does not yet understand what will happen, but is obliged to trust. Very soon, someone should come. It remains to wait a little. He should not be noticed, just like Belle himself, not understanding. The beauty raised an eyebrow, since climbing to the third floor will be quite a difficult task. Waving it off, the man assures that his friend climbs walls well. There will be no problems. Arnoa, hearing a sharp sound, raised her head in surprise. A raccoon stood in front of her, clearly an unexpected guest in such a place. Her face lit up with slight surprise and confusion. The baby looked at her, his mouth wide open, as if he was about to say something important. However, animals, as a rule, do not talk. The woman sat down in front of her new friend, gently stroking his head, smiling. She remembered how she had already met him on the hunt. When he attacked Banus, with a slight smile in her voice, she asks a question, looking at him with curiosity, assuming that the raccoon is a student of the main magician from the tower. Belle looks sternly at the raccoon standing next to him. He says that enough reports, and turns to his interlocutor to move away from his partner, not understanding what is happening. She still continues to follow him. A moment later, a boy with bright hair appears, joyfully greeting the queen. He has long wanted to meet Her Majesty. While the hero's rage overwhelms him, he demands an immediate report. His companion, trembling with fear and excitement, begins to report the news in confusion. Panic is clearly visible on his face, but despite this, he continues to report the latest news collected from Kesman. Her gaze froze when she heard the name. A duchy located in the very north of the continent, a gaze filled with anxiety, as if reflecting her thoughts that were whirling through her head, foreshadowing something serious. She can't ignore it, that's for sure. Arnoa understands that we are talking about the duchy where Aelier and his daughter started a war specifically to steal more money. They don't care about human lives, because the most important thing is their own thoughts and consciousness. Even before that, there were too many intrigues around them that interfered with the state. The chief mage of the tower lay leaning against the pillow, languidly squinting and recalling the previous conversation. It was obvious that he was tired, considering that all this news could not be called good. The maiden then asked why they were planning an attack when the war was already going on. There was a slight mockery in his voice, as if he was surprised at her naivety. The woman nodded. She turned to ask Alas again. If so, it would be better to ask him everything, because the news would come from such a person. There was hope in her voice while the lady asked if this war was over. He, sitting on the floor, only spread his hands and answered with regret that no, not even a hint of peace was visible. However, according to him, Kesman did not have the strength to continue this endless slaughter. The young girl's gaze freezes. The tension increases when she thinks out loud that the Duke deliberately started the war. The character joyfully exclaims, not understanding how she guessed. It is clear that if you think about it, you can understand the whole meaning. While active military actions are going on, the imperial palace is obliged to sponsor a man without asking unnecessary questions. As is known, Luciano gave the Duke everything he asked for, but Aelier still killed the emperor without even thinking. For his plans, he needed to behave exactly like that. Of course, Arnoa did not suspect, but the imperial palace was in even greater trouble than the kingdom of Dehan, and the outcome of this war became obvious in advance, even when the actions began. Now, there are a few other questions. The lady will find out what else is left to be told. The boy with shining eyes continued his story animatedly. His enthusiasm was noticeable in every word. He proudly said that recently the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Army created a special detachment. His voice trembled with excitement. He barely managed to restrain himself from jumping to other topics. A scream breaks out from her chest, but the heroine tries to suppress it as quickly as possible. It will be easier. And specifically for everyone, the Duke's gloomy, sinister smile is displayed in her head. It is clear that Aelier did not create this detachment for victory, because the people there are already suicide bombers, so the man decided to punish everyone he doesn't like. The queen moves on to another. She wants to know who is among those gathered. The young man sits thoughtfully, slightly tilting his head to the side, pondering the answer to the question. He explains that the members of this special detachment have completely different statuses. None of them dared to contradict the Duke, but there is something that unites them all, a hidden connection, invisible but strong. The gaze is focused, the lips are pressed together, and there is surprise in the voice. The magician says that all 20 people from that detachment are soldiers of the kingdom of Durkhan. The thought that the Duke already knows about the death of the prince causes even more tension, awakening doubts and anxiety. Something needs to be done further, but this is more difficult. Aelier clearly planned to eliminate only Luciano, leaving Ariane alive. That was his plan, planned step by step, but events took an unexpected turn. It became known that the young man had also died. This changes the entire balance of power, turning the outcome of the intrigues into an unpredictable whirlpool of consequences. The Duke is determined to break the spirit of the Empire's next successor, King Dehan, who is prophesied to ascend to the throne as his wife has renounced all titles, the plan being to destroy the hopes and future of the kingdom by crushing those who might threaten his power. Askelaus quickly explained that what had happened 10 days ago was just the beginning. In fact, a few days ago, a special squad that had participated in a dangerous mission had been destroyed. All the soldiers had died. Kesman had become the site of their public execution, which had become a sad news that had spread throughout the kingdom. The characters are deep in discussion of a terrible plan that has obviously caused a lot of pain and suffering. Belle asks, why complicate the whole situation? There's no point in this because it is much easier to deal with Binus directly. Forcing him to change, the blonde reminds that if the Duke did this, he would have to take the blame for the death. He does not need responsibility. People will not take it well. The guy again finds himself in the center of events, although he himself does not want it. Of course, he does not really understand anything because he had to take the throne and become the king of Durhan by complete accident, which happened not so long ago. He had to stay on the sidelines, giving in to another person. Now he is haunted by constant failures. For Kaisen, this is a plus. A smile appears by itself. Banus was informed of everything that had happened in the last few days. He clenched his fist. Indignation was boiling inside him. In the 3 days that had passed since that incident, not a single word of apology had been heard, which he so badly desired. Everything was boiling in his head. How could this be? How could one be such an impudent girl? A servant stood in front of him, humbly lowering her eyes, clearly not realizing all the rage raging in his soul. The maid looked at the gentleman with concern. Her voice trembled slightly as she reported, "No crying, only thunderous silence." One of the maids even spoke to the queen, but the answer was just as cold. The young man frowned. His thoughts were absorbed in what was happening behind the closed door. The queen assured that she was fine, but something in her words seemed strange, because food and water were still not served. Turning around, the blonde tries to restrain himself. It is even more difficult than before. The servant was also clearly puzzled by the latest events. Besides, she was much more cheerful than 3 days ago, adds his interlocutor, casting a heavy look, as if trying to find meaning in what was happening. Of course, they did not see the face, but the voice was completely fine. The girl is not a witch, but then it is not clear how it happened that she still does not think to beg for mercy. after 3 days without food and drink. By this time, she should already be lying unconscious or screaming, standing at the door, and not living happily. Her condition is misleading. In the character's thoughts, a thought appears about a girl who, even after 3 days without food and drink, maintains her dignity and does not pray for mercy. He understands that now she is too proud. This is the whole problem. Her resilience causes surprise, but also bewilderment. Even if she is guilty, she will never apologize. These words will not be forthcoming. The man is lost in his thoughts, thinking that he wants to starve her even longer. It would be right considering what exactly she did, but then he realizes that if she dies, he could have serious problems. If rumors that she died not from illness, but from hunger, reach the emperor, everything will turn against him, because no one knows what exactly to expect from Luciano. A young man in a formal suit looks with slight irritation and fatigue, realizing that the situation is getting out of control. He has to restrain his emotions with difficulty, saying that nothing can be done. At this time, a servant with an anxious face bursts into the room, shouting that something terrible has happened. The news from Kesman is very important. The character looks at his interlocutor with tension, trying to understand the meaning of what is happening. The message that all the soldiers of the recently formed detachment were caught and brutally executed shocks him. His thoughts are filled with the horror of realization. Something irreparable has happened. He is scared, because in his head there was not even an option for such a development of events. The servant, lightly squeezing the parchment in his hand, gloomily reports that the letter said that many soldiers were beheaded and their heads were put on display for all to see. His words are disturbing, and his face tenses. Banas sits, clenching his fists in indignation, and his eyes are full of horror. He cannot believe what is happening, feeling injustice and wondering why fate is so cruel to him. The character is in a state of panic, wondering how it was possible that rumors of his affair with Aroa had leaked out despite her refusal. He sits, clasping his hands, in an attempt to suppress his nervous excitement. The question of why Emperor Luciano is behaving this way towards him does not give him peace. His hand supports his head. It becomes more difficult to breathe because problems appear one after another. The families of the dead aristocrats will not leave it like that. They will definitely come with showdowns. It will not be possible to ignore them. Thinking about this, he tugged at his hair, wondering why the emperor cares so much about that girl. The young man thinks with a smug smile about how he made the sister of someone dear to him a queen, and now the beautiful Lissa is next to him. For some reason, he is convinced that this demonstration of strength and a successful marriage will prove to everyone that he is the best match for the king's sister, and that now he should think about it. The servant carefully says, "Your Majesty, the officials are already waiting for you in the reception room." The blonde frowned, raising an eyebrow in surprise, because he did not expect that time had passed so quickly. Exhaling tiredly, he commanded to release the queen, realizing that it was necessary to act quickly despite all the internal disagreements. From the very beginning, the protagonist knew that the wedding would be a heavy burden for him, like chains that tightly wrapped around his arms and legs. The realization of this was heavy, dragging him down as if every step was no longer his own. A feeling of powerlessness seized him, because in the end, this is what happened to him. The palace meeting was heating up. One of the courtiers, unable to bear it, shouted out that 20 soldiers of the kingdom of Dehan died in vain. Another, in red, waved his arms in anger, calling what was happening unfair. They demanded an explanation from His Majesty, not believing what had happened. All this was too cruel. Sitting at a long table, the kingdom's advisor, looking sadly at the papers, says that their kingdom has always been loyal to the empire. The aristocrat in red, sitting next to him, with bitterness in his eyes, furiously asks how the ruler could do this to them. The atmosphere in the hall grew tense, anticipating a quick denouement. A man with golden hair, dressed in an expensive, dark suit, sat at the table and, clasping his hands, spoke with regret. He, like everyone else, did not understand the emperor's actions, but being his sister's husband, he realized that he was not able to influence the decisions he made. This thought tormented him. Banas cupped his chin in his hand, his face reflected regret, and there was bitterness in his eyes. He thought about how sad it was that time could not be turned back. The wedding had already taken place, and now nothing could be fixed. Thoughts about the past tormented him. He would like to change, but his wife would not allow him. The talk of divorce stirred up strange feelings in him. He looked at the old man with bewilderment when he suggested this idea. It sounded cold and distant, but divorce could still be an option that had not yet been considered, which was an obvious mistake or a gap. The character, with a thoughtful expression, looks at the object in the room, thinking about the meaning of further actions. His thoughts are full of doubts. Is it worth continuing this union with the queen? Because for Dehan there's no benefit in this. Thoughts are interrupted by the voice of Count Estea, who confidently insists that divorce is a logical decision. The man, with a cold expression on his face, thinks that if they can come to an agreement, there will be enough reasons for a divorce. The emperor can make it possible, because he himself is a fairly normal person who understands that sometimes families can break up after the wedding because something goes completely wrong. The two advisors stand next to each other, their jaws clenched tightly, one of them, keeping his back straight, trying not to show emotion, while the other is clearly worried about what is happening. They discuss the need to punish the queen for her misdeeds, so that in the future they will not have to spoil the mood of the emperor. Like now, they can't behave like this with her anymore. A divorce will solve the problems. The hero thoughtfully touches his hand and thinks about the dowry that the queen brought. In the carriage filled with gold, there were still a lot of jewels. If a divorce occurs, this dowry will be in danger, considering that they do not have that kind of money. Thoughts about the possible consequences begin to worry him. Jumping up from his seat, the man confidently offers his solution. He is full of enthusiasm, promising to convene an academic council and find the best specialists from all over the country. Because they will help solve the problems, there is determination in his voice. He is sure that there is a loophole that will allow you to avoid the return of the dowry, and it just needs to be thought through wisely. Count Estea has his own goal, which he will follow to the very end, to marry his daughter to his majesty. Now is the time to focus on the couple's child, or rather, on the health and well-being of his daughter. The second interlocutor listens with slight surprise and tension on his face. Thinking about this unexpected advice, there is contempt. The nobleman stands up and clears his throat to say something. First, they will send tribute from the kingdom to prove their loyalty. He assumes that the emperor will not act rashly. Finishing. He adds that after that they can agree on a divorce as if it was a premeditated plan and pretend that there will be no problems. A man lost in his thoughts thoughtfully looks away, pondering the proposals made. He clenches his fist, as if this decision was not easy for him. His thought is clear. I will think about the proposal. With a mysterious smile on his face, he thinks that there is always a way around difficulties. Confidence that there will be a loophole slides through his thoughts, because he knows that in any situation you can find a way out. Larissa, dressed in a dress with bright flowers and decorations, stands against the backdrop of a magnificent rose garden, where she entered for a walk with her friends, accompanied by compliments from those present who admire her appearance and follow her on her heels. She laughs, waving off the praise, while her mother nearby remarks that for a walk in the garden she could have chosen something simpler, but no less wonderful. There is nothing to be done if there are only such dresses. In any case, they fit, and this is, accordingly, the most important thing. Meanwhile, two girls were whispering nearby, surprised that the prince gave as many as 10 dresses, which none of them could even dream of. Larissa held a ruby necklace in her hands, admiring its shine. She thought about the value of dresses compared to such jewelry. At this time, her friends could not hide their delight. One was envious of the romance of the situation. The other noted how elegant it was. They could not take their eyes off the girl, confident that she was incredibly beautiful with this necklace. The beauty again repeats about grace and elegance. Each of the presented is simply wonderful. And last time the king gave her black diamonds, those same diamonds, she only smiled mysteriously, secretly. The environment dreams of the same wonderful gifts and love, which they have not yet deserved. She can't stop showing off. Everything is too wonderful. And being the center of attention is the best thing a beauty can come up with, she thoughtfully exclaims, about why she is so envied, because everyone loves her so much. The The maids around her assure that this is just a sign of great success. Everything was fine until the figure of the Empress appeared in the distance. Her hair is impossible to tangle. The fans of the future queen bow their heads just like Astea herself. You can see from her face that she is very displeased. The blonde snorts. It seems the only one who did not pay her respects was the Countess, standing behind with an angry expression on her face. The girl with fiery red hair is clearly irritated and angry, and the princess remembers the past and caustically remarks that one of those present has forgotten about decency since she was kicked out of the palace. Anger is overflowing. Her face is distorted with emotion, but now it is more important how the Countess's wrists are. She was probably in a lot of pain last time. One of the women looks back with tension. She herself does not know how to react, because as we know, being rude to the queen is still forbidden. Her face, which emphasizes the harsh tone of the words, changes into another form. The woman, remaining calm, pays attention to her wrist, noticing that the blow was probably painful, but her face radiates calm confidence. With a slight smile, the Countess extended her hand, continuing the conversation. The cold and mocking tone of her voice sounded too confident. She knew that her words would be unpleasant. They say that the princess went crazy like a young foal, and therefore she was locked in a room for several days, and they did not give her food and water. Addressed to another woman, already raised rage and confusion in her soul, but retreated back because it becomes scary what answer will follow. Of course, it's Astea, so she gives off a cold and strange feeling on a daily basis, even now, after she encountered someone she truly hates. She notices that after leaving the room, she didn't look like a person, although in her head she understands that this is most likely not true. Her gaze was arrogant, and the hand gesture with which she spoke only increased the feeling of superiority that she enjoyed at that moment. The eyes narrowed in bewilderment. How this woman, after 3 days without food and water, can look even better than before. A true beauty. Smiling, she waves it off, adding that the king could not be so cruel to her majesty. The maiden calmly declares that she lived well, and even Larissa recently apologized for her rudeness, admitting her mistakes, which only pleased. The beauty recoils back. She does not know how to react to such a thing. The queen herself recently threatened her with arrows, and now she says other things, and if you take into account the fact that the lady is pregnant, this is almost a crime, smirking. The blonde turns away. She only remembers how she aimed at a boar, which was eventually killed as prey. The interlocutor squeals. It seemed to her that this was an insult directed at her. The only comparison is that the heroine screams exactly the same. In this, they are definitely similar. She should learn manners, but perhaps there will be time to do this, no longer able to bear it. The future wife of Banas steps forward. Until now she waited because she felt sorry for Arnoa, but now one should not even dream of mercy. Playing with fire is the most dangerous occupation. It was worth retreating and continuing to remain silent, standing aside. The woman no longer wants to talk to someone who, on the contrary, only makes things worse. She doesn't want to see her at all anymore. The blonde is not going to keep quiet. She orders Larissa to get out of her way. It was the queen who walked through the garden first, and some degenerate climbed forward and began to assert his rights. It's worth getting smart, moderating your ardor and hiding. The woman is angry. She literally feels bad. It happens before your eyes. Her teeth clench with force, causing her eyes to turn red. A slight crunch is heard. The girl still knows no bounds. It's terrible because it is Astea, who is the king's first love and the one who actually carries his heir. Words do not require confirmation. You just need to deal with the slight obstacle in the person of Arnoa. After that, you will be able to go to Banas. Now it's time to do everything right, to press on the blonde's sore spot. This is the most obligatory. Lowering her voice, the lady smiles and begins to talk about what is probably known to everyone gathered. The blonde brought from her empire stones that her mother gave her. Black diamonds are known for their beauty. You can't find them anywhere else. They are used in the silver crown, created not so long ago. His Majesty loves his mistress very much, more than anything in this world. So, of course, he decided that it would be more correct for the tiara to sparkle on the beauty's head. the thing is a pair to the one that the blonde is wearing, he said that he would give it away, thereby further showing his true intentions. Saying these words, the woman smiles, but there is no warmth emanating from her, rather hatred. She feels superiority. Wedding rings no longer have any meaning for a woman, but the queen does not know this. She continues to put pressure on her consciousness. The king promised to melt them down and make new, luxurious earrings for Larissa. Her jewelry, which once symbolized a connection and commitment, will now turn into a symbol of her status and exaltation. She easily remembers this promise, demonstrating her confidence in the future and position at court. The beauty smirks, saying that her status in the eyes of the king is indisputable. Her voice is full of confidence and contempt. She knows how to argue and is going to behave like that. Without any awareness, her position is strong and unshakable, even if it causes rejection from others. In her thoughts, she repeats that this will not change in any way. No matter how others try to undermine confidence or influence, she wants to show who is the boss in this place. Through the uncertain and slightly confused features of her face, her eyes flashed with surprise. She did not believe that in front of her was really a symbol that she had never seen before, an ornament even more exquisite than anything she had encountered in her entire life. Her rival looked with disdain. Noticing this, although she had counted on interest, indignation burst out. The heroine's face distorted, and with a cry, she demanded to know where this mysterious cat's eye came from. The lady's eyes remain cold. As soon as she finishes talking, she looks at Larissa with obvious contempt. In a calm but threatening tone, she says that there are things in the world that are not worth wanting, and if the beauty does not want to see her rudeness again, she should back off. The interlocutor slightly bows her head. The gesture emphasizes her calm but unyielding position. Larissa makes a puzzled remark. Her eyes widen in surprise, her cheeks slightly pink. Probably the blonde does not want the persons to be discussed in a bad light, showing them as the worst. The words penetrate the consciousness of the interlocutor. The reproaches sound ironic that the king might want to divorce the one who has earned a reputation as a villain who behaves very inappropriately. The smile freezes on her face, and a sparkle shines in her eyes. She is a real genius who helped her with her divorce problem. The woman comes closer, gradually showing that things are going to get really bad. Grabbing the scoundrel by the hand, she pulls her closer, grinning in her face. The lady asks if Larissa can swim. She, of course, doesn't care, because if she doesn't have the ability, the world won't lose much. The heroine's frightened gaze froze when she realized what was happening. She screamed in panic, trying to explain something and hold on, but her efforts were in vain. The next moment, and she was already flying down, her hair fluttering, the water noisily enveloping, swallowing her body from head to toe. In despair, she calls for help. Her cry pierces the air, but help does not come because the people standing on the bridge do not know how to get down to her. The pink-haired woman looks at the man with anger, being in a depressed state after what happened. In despair, she exclaims that she is expecting a child from him, hoping for support. After such news, he should treat her with more love. The guy, still standing in front of her, hesitantly tries to explain, claiming that it is difficult for him to believe in such a thing. Slightly confused, he makes excuses, trying to smooth over the situation. The girl throws herself into her lover's arms, with anxiety on her face. He tries to console her with visible excitement, telling her how terrible the trials she had to go through were. Of course, everything will be fine. However, even in such a tense atmosphere, his words sound like insincere support, especially when he adds that the pond is not deep enough for someone to drown, thereby revealing indifference. The man with glasses, pointing to the woman's condition, says in a restrained tone that if she had remained calmer, she would not have swallowed water. She behaved too recklessly when she splashed and screamed while in the pond. A stern look emphasizes the seriousness of the situation. Suddenly, the rather irritated king with golden hair suddenly splashes out emotions, shouting at him, calling him a useless, impudent man, and demanding that he leave immediately. The boy continued to be furious about what was happening, his fist clenched and his eyes filled with rage. He could not understand how such a mistake could have been made. Despite all his work related to important tasks and the war with Kesmenos, such a useless person was sent to help him. The doctor turned out to be incapable of anything. The anger was directed at those who made this decision, and he was determined to fix everything. Larissa can't help but feel the anxiety inside. Her body is shaken from the surge of emotions. A feeling of uncertainty fills her heart as she tries to explain herself. Her lover, with a note of concern in his voice, tells her not to pay attention to the words of another man, clearly trying to calm her down. But her eyes are shining, filled with even more fear and anxiety about what might happen next time if trouble befalls them again. The sadness from the imagination that spoils everything only increases time after time. It is not the first time that this happens. When the queen, without any shame, attempts on the life of a servant, trying to do it in a sophisticated way, the girl, kneeling down, anxiously clasped her hands, afraid of the predictable future. She was sure that the lady would try to do it again, and then when there would not be a single soul around. The characters are in a tense situation that is obviously not going to be resolved. Larissa asks with concern in her voice. If the threat to her life is not a good enough reason to protect her, she insistently asks to do what they have been thinking about for several years, since the wedding. The man is furious, his face distorted with anger, clenching his fists. He shouts that he already has more than enough of such reasons. Of course he is angry with his wife, not his mistress. The carriage, decorated with gold, was delivered on the same day as the future queen herself. As a result, all the wealth went to the construction and decoration of the palace, the columns, beautiful walls, and garden cost, perhaps. Too much money. Also, the money was used to create luxurious clothes and jewelry for Larissa, who bragged about her wealth to everyone she knew. The king, with an impenetrable expression, thoughtfully lowers his head. His gaze, full of distrust, is focused on his beloved. In his thoughts, he wonders what he should do with those same riches, whether even the pond into which Astea fell today has been built. His discontent and suspicions grow, but outwardly he remains calm. For the time being, the lady turns to him with excitement, pointing out the possibility of solving the problem in another way if such an opportunity arises. Arnoa reflects on her past, realizing that back then she was not given any choice. Luciano made all the decisions for her, completely controlling her life because after the death of the Empress, he took the throne and began to behave the way he wanted. But now, remembering, she realizes that even the property left to her by Anastasia went as a dowry. Every penny went to the treasury of Durkhan. That was the rule. The heroine reflects on the fact that the emperor might be angry if the dowry cannot be returned. Banus probably has exactly the same thoughts in his head. He is still holding on to this marriage, realizing that this is all that is left for him. It's been 27 days since Bel announced the emperor's death. He arrived and promised to keep quiet for a little while longer. The news continues to hang like a shadow over the young lady's mind. She must do something. But over this month, she has literally tried so many ways to get rid of her title of queen and go back to the empire. The man with a stern expression looks away, assessing what is happening. He was called, so all that was left was to react. The woman with long silver hair at this time emotionally raises her hands, promising to cleanse her soul in order to give it. It seems that Belle will still win, so she can accept all sorts of congratulations in advance. That's exactly how he wanted everything to end, which means it will only get better for him. His desires, it turns out, have changed, but now, when she asks what he wants now, the tension between them increases. It remains to think. There is a revolution in his head, too many misunderstandings. Bell turned slowly. His voice was cold but full of hidden desires. At first he did not want to reveal what was in his head, but he understood that he would have to. The hero said these words not for himself, but for her, the feeling superior to the situation. I want to see you take advantage of the right and ascend the throne. His plans were different, but now the most important thing is that the lady is happy in her life in the future. The conversation between the Tower Mage and the Empress continued, but now it was becoming more and more heated. The man reminded that for him, as the one who made the bet, it would be too shameful to send a person like Luciano. His words were filled with bitterness and disdain. because for him this mission looked like obvious weakness. Of course, Casion's soul is noble, and he would like to take her into his hands, but it is not worth it. The dark-haired man continues his reasoning, talking enthusiastically about deals with magicians. His voice sounds reserved, but there is a subtle interest in it, as if he wants to know who will win this game. His hand nervously squeezes his collar when he challenges, offering to help. The girl is surprised. She did not think that she could ever be so lucky. The young man walks forward and even bends over the girl a little. With a cold look, he reminds that magic cannot harm his opponent. This is an unchangeable rule until a new emperor is chosen. Their faces almost touch, but the tension between them grows. It is also impossible to take the life of the opponent, and he cannot be lied to. The restrictions are too important. They cannot be bypassed. After the finished sentence, the young man calmly asked if he could still be useful to her, to which the girl replied that this was already enough. In this way, the two of them could achieve success. Her face reflected fatigue, as if all the events of the last few days had left a deep mark. The interlocutor smiled slightly. He had already figured out how he would behave in order to force the hero to divorce the lady. A man with a serious face stands in the light. His figure inspires strength and confidence. He announces his status, the envoy of the empire, emphasizing the importance of his presence, which is definitely not just like that. Binas, with a confused expression, does not understand why this important man is here. His confusion is reflected in his question, full of doubts and anxiety. Usually the emperor is not interested in what is happening in other kingdoms. The man is clearly shocked, with a confused expression on his face, trying to comprehend what is happening, his voice trembling with disbelief as he exclaims, trying to understand why the emissary of the empire was here, in this room. However, Bell, keeping his cool, looks at him with seriousness, his words sounding calm and confident. He's conveying a message to the main one in the kingdom, but first he needs to listen. When the young man, without losing confidence in his words, promised not to send the queen back to the palace, his determination was unbreakable. He knew that he owed her a lot and would not allow her to be in a humiliating position. The queen remained faithful to the imperial family, and he could not leave her alone because it was his duty. His country could never refuse what the emperor gave them, so all that remained was to behave appropriately. When Dehan suddenly realized, and the words that had preceded him for so long reached him, a shadow of shock ran across his eyes. His Majesty is not against a divorce? This discovery cut, taking away the last doubts. Shock was reflected on his face. His voice trembled while he spoke the words. The messenger came for this very reason, to convey the will of the king, and this changed everything, because now the problem was solved. Fershin's words echo in his interlocutor's head, making him tense up with realization. He sits on the bed, looking lost at the man standing in front of him. Loyalty to the empire has long been proven, and his actions over the years confirm this. The only thing that still confuses him is the dowry. Now, under the current circumstances, it is difficult for him to come to terms with the fact that there is no way to turn everything back, since every penny has already been spent. The head of the magic tower continued to speak. His voice sounded like a steel blade, cold and sharp. He waved it off, speaking of the dowry brought by the queen as the most insignificant part of the wealth that the imperial family possessed. His words were full of disdain. He reasoned that it would be foolish to spoil relations with such an influential ally over a trifle that could be forgiven. The tall man with the same expression asks if everything is clear. His gaze is full of confidence, and his words sound like a final warning. He will never come again. The young man in front of him, although a little confused, answers with a short affirmative yes. Now all responsibility lies with the prince. The decision must be made as soon as possible. This way he will behave correctly. A second later, the brunette rose into the air. Bright lights of magic were burning around him, forcing him to hide behind the window, carrying him away in the other direction. The hero who remained in the room smiled with satisfaction. A strange, ominous feeling flared up inside him, because now, when all the cards were open, he was sure that he would be able to divorce his wife without losing a single important position, and especially money, which he already lacked. The room was filled with tension. Every gesture and word was taken with special attention. Estea's thoughts about the current events were confused. The palace had recently been seized, and the kingdom's army had been publicly executed when they were sent to that cursed place in the north. The fear that the emperor would learn the truth was growing because it could completely change his intentions about the divorce. After all these events, the character in the green jacket throws her hair back. Her movements are calm, but her gaze is focused. She gives the order. 3 days to prepare for the news that will have to stun His Majesty. After that, he will no longer have a choice. He undertakes to tell the news to the king. She is not even afraid if she has to leave the palace. As it turns out, this is an inevitable sacrifice for the sake of fulfilling her duty. Then everything went great, exactly as the main character had planned. Baines, who was quite happy, immediately told Larissa the news that an envoy of His Majesty had arrived to him. The girl did not miss the opportunity to take advantage of the moment. She felt that the time had come, and now, confidently demanding a divorce, made her move aimed at resolving this long-standing problem. The doctor's words were still in her head. The process of divorcing spouses usually takes 10 days, but under pressure from the Countess, everything happened much faster, instead of the 3 days that the Queen had counted on. And as planned, the procedure was completed in one, which was only a plus. There was no limit to the joy, but the blonde tried not to show it. The king, with his crown on his head and his purple robe, stands with an expression of triumph, his eyes full of pride. When he notices her arrival, Kaizion bows respectfully before him, saying, "I greet your majesty, Bainassa," and he, not tolerating deviation, sharply orders her, "On your knees," and expects that now will be the most beautiful scene in his life. The young man stands tall, surrounded by his courtiers, looking at the woman who kneels before him. Her figure bowed to the floor in obvious submission, but her eyes are hidden so that true emotions are not visible. A voice full of authority and determination announces the divorce. "I, Banis Roche Durkhan, announce my divorce from you," she quietly whispers, finally, expressing long-awaited relief. It took longer to wait, but it was worth it to be free. The king turns and calls the name of the new queen who stands next to him. Larissa smiles, realizing that the most interesting part has begun. With pride in her voice, she exclaims that it is true. Determination slides forward. His ex-wife bows before him. Her long silver hair hides her face. The man tells her to leave the palace, because from this day on she is deprived of her title, bowing her head even lower and quietly thinking that finally everything is over. The lady smiles. The girl carefully shakes off her dress and says that since the divorce happened and she is no longer the main one, it means she is not obliged to observe any decency. Holding on to the document that costs the most, the girl begins to express her independence with a new sense of freedom. Heading forward, her interlocutor is stunned by the bold step and asks in shock, "What?" Not expecting such a turn of events. The king looks at the woman who suddenly shows confidence in her speech and actions. He tries to understand where her confidence comes from, thinking to himself, why is she so confident? Meanwhile, the princess standing next to him, slightly nervous, tries to convince him that she is now in shock and does not control herself, justifying her behavior. Very soon the first tears will appear, which will change the state. The lady smiles. She orders her friend to tell the truth, or rather what the emperor told her before he died. A funnel of magic forms around her in a second. The wind almost knocks everyone off their feet. The couple standing near the throne screams, but only Arnoa looks straight ahead. There's nothing to fear when she herself called for it. There's a drop of anticipation hidden inside the heart. A brunette appeared from the funnel, who gradually descends, leaving an unwavering expression on his face. The blonde immediately begins to get nervous, asking what the emperor's envoy forgot in the castle, because nothing was known about him until this moment. Lowering his voice, Bell asks if those gathered heard how the Empress called him by name. He presses until he wins, realizing that now the most important moment will come. As it turned out, the emperor and the prince died. It was unexpected even for him, and even more so for everyone else. Banas and Larissa shrink in horror and cannot help but exclaim, realizing that they are finished since the young man divorced Arnoa Kaisian. Her titles are returned back. The new Empress of the continent is the girl who is now standing opposite with a wide smile on her face. The Golden Throne now serves as a silent witness to the conflict. Banas, in despair, falls to his knees, begs to stay in Dehan a little longer, as if clutching at the last bits of power. His face is distorted with sadness, and his words sound like a plea. Tears have accumulated in his eyes. At his request, the lady coldly turns away, saying that she cannot even look at him. Her voice is full of disgust and determination. The man has long become disgusting to her. The blonde tries to liven up the atmosphere, reminding everyone that the banquet is organized in honor of the guest. He points his hand at the people and the beautifully laid tables. His smile is tense, hiding his fear. The beauty, frowning, with cold calm, realizes the true intentions. Her thoughts are furiously scrolling, whether to continue listening to his empty speeches or finally put an end to this circus, going to another place where the voices will not be heard. Arnoa, sitting on the throne, thoughtfully examines her hands, lightly stroking her fingers. Her gaze has not changed even after everything she was told. She notes that, being a member of the family, she never had the opportunity to try something like this. She was fed something unpleasant. Trying not to give the best, the blonde, clearly in shock from her words, tries to remain calm, but panic is hidden in his eyes because all the words are true. The blond man, standing in his dress uniform, seemed lost and made excuses to those gathered. He spread his arms wide in an attempt to explain his actions. Doubts and indecision played on his face, saying that he thought the woman was carrying his child. He tried to justify his actions, stating that he wanted to take responsibility. But in fact, he did not love Estea at all. But his words sounded helpless, as if he himself did not believe in his excuses. The young lady's gaze is full of bitterness and disappointment, and he, with a smile on his face, seems distant and carefree. She thinks that if he treated his wife the same way as the one he is about to make his wife, perhaps everything would have turned out differently. This moment is filled with regret for lost opportunities because the young man did not think ahead, but acted as if there was no longer any meaning. The man does not give up. He tries to justify his actions to the end, barely holding back his nervous tension. He realizes that he was deceived. Larissa conspired with the royal physician and lied about the pregnancy. The realization of this shocks him. His voice is full of despair. The mistakes he made lead to disasters that he's now forced to accept, although he believes that in particular all the blame should be on other people. Turning sharply, the main one, experiencing a mixture of feelings that did not disappear anywhere, looked at the familiar one. And in his eyes one could read helpless indignation. The girl was obliged to kneel and beg for forgiveness, so as not to get what she deserved. Feeling even worse, of course, the handsome man continued to blame everyone around him, thinking that only unfortunate circumstances led them to this. The two always acted as if they had been in love for centuries. Nothing seemed to change. They tried to show everyone a beautiful picture, completely ignoring the third person in this relationship. Now Dehan sacrifices his mistress to his ex-wife. His first love means nothing anymore. I wanted to think that the man is not so cruel, but he proved the opposite again and again. He did not care. Countess Estea bursts into tears. She has been on edge for the last 10 minutes, and now it all bursts out. She screams in horror, asking what she did to deserve such a bad attitude, which does not fit at all. She was loved before, and now she is ordered to do terrible things. The blonde no longer controls himself. He grabs the beauty's wrist with his hand, asking how she dares to be impudent and abject, because royal orders are not questioned. Pulling the girl closer to him, the young man clenches his teeth and quietly asks her to shut up and kneel down. He has had enough of her screams, which only make him mentally tired. A second later, the heroine finds herself on the floor, right at the feet of the future Empress. She bows her head and does not even think that the sad look and eyes that she can direct at the blonde will help her. She still does not believe that her lover walked on her pride. Turning away, the lady snorts. Everything connected with these two disgusts. She wants to move away so as not to watch. She will not be indulgent, so it is easier to stop. The couple has disgraced themselves enough. There's no point in going all the way. Dehan's voice sounds pleading, but when he talks about Larissa, everything changes. If not for this brat, their relationship would be happy. They could become a wonderful couple. The king really wanted to be there, to be loved. Seeing how the owner of the tower, who, as it turned out, had arrived for that event, appeared next to Her Majesty and began to dance with her, jealousy awoke in the young man, which he could not restrain. In fact, the blonde was in love with Kaisyon, so he became jealous when he saw his wife with another man. Light tears welled up in his eyes, and he himself knelt down as if trying to show his true, sincere intentions. A sweet voice addresses the beauty. His dear ex-wife can be with him again, only if they become spouses and give this whole story at least one more chance. Turning away, the heroine says that she felt disgusted by everything that was happening. She does not want to fall into the trap of a stupid wedding again. It is time for manipulation. So the main character smiles slyly, asking her to think again, coming to the right conclusions. As is known, the future Empress has no experience in governing the state at all. She has been in the background almost her entire life, because first Luciano ruled, and then the prince, who was second in line in this cruel world of politics. Such a kind and bright person as Aroa, in the blink of an eye, will find himself trapped and lose everything, even his precious life. If they can clear up the misunderstandings and resolve all the grievances, luck will surely be on their side, and the couple will be wonderful again. Lowering her voice a few notes lower, the lady asks if the man is joking. Because all this is tiring her out, she no longer has the strength to put up with how her ex-husband is escalating things. Only wind remains in his head, as soon as it became clear that the woman will take the rightful throne that has passed into her hands. Finally, deciding to say something, the lady lifts her chin high. The fact that a man rules Dehan is a tragedy both for the future Empress herself and for the whole world. Unfortunately, people will not change this. Someone who can read people on the streets exactly as he says cannot be so easily deceived. He just had to be lucky. In the place of the young man, the lady did not doubt the doctor's words, so she should understand. It was because of the problems that the young man made it so that the doctor was now fired and would not interfere, which was good because, as it turned out, the lady was going to take Miss Rudes with her to the imperial palace. As the hero said, his ex-wife, such a naive person needs someone professional nearby. If the doctor was able to deceive the smart king, it means the girl is very capable and can help. It was time to end this performance. The lady was pretty tired of what was happening. She got up from her seat and loudly repeated that she wanted everything that was brought with her cart returned to her. The beauty's personal carriage is good. She sits in it, looking around. Perhaps the reason is that the carriage was made with money from her dowry, especially for His Majesty. Anyway, it was wonderful to watch everyone squabble over every penny. As Count Estea attempted to kill a woman, her ex-husband said that in exchange he would confiscate all his property so that there would be more. The prince could not pay all the money, so he even had to give up his favorite cart. As he said, there would be no problems because walking is also quite useful. The maiden decided not to kill the count. She was just going to leave Durkan. The mage from the tower asks if the lady is sure of her decision. The man has done a lot of bad things and perhaps deserves worse. There is no difference because the most important thing is that the old man no longer looms before her eyes. Bending forward, the heroine asks if the young man's work will end when they arrive in the Empire. He promised to go back to his possessions. It must be true because, after all, the brunette has already managed to appoint a new ruler. His work is finished. Smiling, the blonde asks not to leave, but to stay next to her in the Emperor's castle. The hero himself does not understand why he should stay. Has she really fallen in love? His dreams are shattered when the heroine explains that if the head of the tower supports her, the aristocrats will not bother her and will obey her. Outside of Furchen, there is a tendency to discriminate against the mages. If Belle joins the meetings, it will weaken everyone in the castle, turning away. The young man grumbles. It will only be good for his girlfriend, but not for him. The hero realized that the beauty studied politics. The lady could not say why, but her mother taught her a lot, even the most useless things, saying that one day they would be needed in life. Anastasia even talked about the duties of the Empress. The little girl did not know that later she would have to confront Luciano. She thought that her life would be filled with happiness until the very end. The brunette still remains unshakable. One day he will have to leave. Staying in the castle until the very end will clearly not work. Something can happen on his lands, and it is the owner who is obliged to protect others the most. The former empress repeatedly explained that even the king himself has no right to interfere in the affairs taking place in the estates of the magicians. The guardians are known for their bad character. Although the mother had warned the child that he should try to be more careful, she had completely forgotten, because the couple had spent too much time together to change in any way. The hero asked a very strange question. It is hard to believe that the beauty is not afraid at all. He gets up from his seat and leans closer to show how strong his influence is on the people around him. When they first met, the blonde seemed to be scared and must behave in exactly the same way now. Smiling, the beauty remembers the form of a cat that her friend took. After that, she cannot take him seriously. The guy turns away, his face betraying embarrassment and a shadow of some other strange feeling. He wants the Empress to call him Bars in private, because even Anakin doesn't know what his immortal body looks like. It seems that the heroine understood that all magicians must have a scary form that they use in battle, but they are just as cute in the form of a raccoon or a kitten. She remembers the magician's apprentice and smiles at this thought too. The boy's mother was a dragon, and initially all the tower's owners were exactly like that. They were so strong that no one could approach them, trying to find out more. It turns out that the great Amaryllis was the kind of animal that instills fear in other people, but it seems that the beauty wanted her son's immortal body to be a kitten. A smile breaks out on her face again. The woman realized that everything is fine. Cats are much better when you hug them. It becomes much warmer, both in your soul and physically. She likes it that way. Belle looked at him with an evil gaze until he turned into an animal. Jumping back, the future Empress asks to wait. In fact, he is not an animal, but a man. This changes everything. The baby is fawning, trying to get petted. In the end, the lady herself provoked him, calling him cute, exhaling. The heroine takes him into her arms, noting that the magician did not like to be petted before. Although many people used to say that it was better to be wary of the tower's owner, there was certainly never any advice about not falling under the charm of soft wool and a warm look. There is chaos in the castle. The aristocrats are not sure that the queen will arrive. Several weeks have passed since the news of the death of the emperor, and even the prince himself became known. There is less and less hope. The new ruler is still unknown. There was no news from Dehan. This is very strange. Anakin sent an envoy about a month ago. It is strange that there is still no news. Preparations should have been completed. Bent puts his hands on the table and asks worriedly if anyone else has sent a man with news to the kingdom. Banus has become the ruler. He should celebrate, but he certainly shouldn't act so quietly as if nothing happened. Countess Herman also speaks out. It seems she was sending someone or was just getting ready to, somehow strange, because it is unknown whether the messenger was able to arrive at the destination. Perhaps something happened to him on the way. One of the aristocrats is more interested than the others in what message they are talking about. Baron Tubert scoffs. The lady probably sent a photo portrait of her niece. She is slipping a new mistress to the emperor who has not even arrived yet. It's always like this. You have to grab the young man tightly so that he doesn't start to break free. Whoever hears will say that this is a big problem. If the new emperor falls for something like this, the duke washes his hands of it and returns back to his territory. The brunette waves it off. All this is obvious nonsense, but of course it's worth thinking about a little. A future ruler who doesn't know anything can't fall for something like that. It would be quite terrible. Besides Countess Herman, the others gathered in this place also sent something as a gift. In order to show their intentions, the aristocrats were not going to sit still. Time is worth its weight in gold. At any moment, it is the same. Tubert boasts that he has prepared a whole mountain of jewels in advance, which he will present to His Majesty. He even decorated everything in the colors of Dehan, so that the man would be happy. Thus, everything will be fine, especially for the Baron. It remains to be seen whether the woman's affair with her mistress will succeed, or whether it will fail immediately after the start. The man is generous. The lady's niece will take care of all the gold as soon as she gets to the castle, and this is only a matter of time. It is obvious that Hermann does not know anything. The new ruler already has a mistress. Everyone in the state knows about their beautiful story. Making a terrible expression on her face, the aristocrat understands that it seems that that girl will have to be killed. If the child that the beauty is carrying is born, everything will only get much worse. Then there will be no turning back. There will be no way out either. It's scary, but no matter how you bribe Banas, when aelier returns, it will no longer matter who sits on the throne. All the problems need to be sorted out before the Duke arrives. That way he won't ruin anything. Hermann smiles. For the first time, she hears some useful advice. Raquel must like it too. At first, the man doesn't understand what they're talking about, but then it dawns on him. His niece will soon become Empress. She's still married to the future ruler, so it must be true. On the contrary, one can say that what the future foretells is excellent, because the girl who was completely forgotten by everyone finally becomes a queen and comes out of the shadow of her mother, ascending the throne. The lady will never again find herself in that cold tower. All this is true, but as long as the alliance is confronting Duke Aelier, it doesn't matter. In the middle of the conversation, the door swings open, and a beauty with bright white hair appears on the threshold. The Baron jumps up first. He asks who she is. Because they are not in a brothel either, where anyone can go, it would be better for the girl to leave this place. But she, without listening, confidently moves forward across the room. The woman lowers her voice but remains just as casual. They met several times in childhood, but it seems Tubert has completely forgotten. Since now he is more surprised than before, it would be necessary to resume the work of the brain. The news has obviously not reached everyone gathered yet. After the lady's words, she sits on the throne and immediately hears the brunette's squeal, which speaks of impudence, because this is His Majesty's place. The one who became the new ruler is precisely the blonde. Of course, no one believes it, because the emperor was supposed to be the one who is in Dehan. The lady realized why everything around was decorated in such a bright style, or rather in purple tones. She even shuddered, because the atmosphere evokes memories. The woman, without thinking twice, throws off the pillow that is bothering her. When asked what she is doing, the heroine snorts. She just hates the color that is now everywhere. It is better to replace everything before there are consequences. Tubert continues to shout, once again asking who she is and why she acts as if she is allowed to do absolutely everything. He must speak frankly, but the beauty was not joking when she said that she was the new ruler. The maiden points forward and asks at least Belle to convey to the narrow-minded people the fact that it is the blonde who will become the new queen of this country. Belkarian says that as the messenger of the magic tower, he has fulfilled his duty and returned back. Tubert asks if what the woman said is true. He still doesn't want to believe it. And unfortunately, it will be too difficult. There are no more options for what to say. The young man will pronounce the name that will glorify the empire, Aroa Salier de Casion. The heroine smiles when everyone repeats. After their friend, thanking the Empress for being there for them, one cannot help but rejoice at the fact that now everything will be much better than before. She has been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Baron Bent jumps up. He did not believe that Her Majesty the Princess was in front of them. Hermann did not recognize the girl at first, because they had not seen each other since she left for the Duchy of Rickel. This happened in her distant childhood. One of the aristocrats asks what happened, because he remembers very well the fact that according to the marriage contract, all the titles of the beauty go to Banas. She was not supposed to become the head of the empire. It is not even connected in any way. Someone in the audience suggests that the king of Dehan has died, but a firm voice tells the truth that she actually divorced him just a few days ago. The contract they signed is no longer valid. Luciano and Ariane are officially dead since the princess is next in line for the throne, which means she is the one who will rule the kingdom. She smiles. Surely everyone understands now. There was silence. It was terrible, but the heroine was not going to give up. She would press until the very end. She was tired after all. She had only just arrived. It would be better to finish what was happening as soon as possible. The greeting was still not heard. Everyone quietly says that they are glad to see the Empress, but she does not feel the joy that she expected. Before, in her memories, the aristocrats constantly ignored her. She tried to go out into society, but no one cared. They did not want to do anything about it. The little girl, whose existence was unnoticed thanks to Luciano's efforts, never even hoped for new recognition from the aristocrats. She was ridiculed for the fact that the man kicked her out of the palace, completely ignoring it. From an early age, the blonde had no ambitions. The imperial throne was not the place the heroine had her sights set on. But now that she has finally managed to climb to the top, it doesn't seem so bad, even quite comfortable for ruling. The most important thing now is the fact that the lady ended up in the palace and will rule the kingdom. She hopes that everything else will be resolved as it comes. She can celebrate the victory. The divorce was not easy at all, and this is already something important. The first thing the beauty did was go to the room. Her chambers were very beautiful, but the door opened faster than she could look around. Anakin appeared there, who immediately ran to hug his old friend. They clearly missed each other. The hero sent a letter, but the friend never read it. It turned out that there was something primitive in it, so she did not lose much. The news about the throne was conveyed in a small message, although, in fact, it was the owner of the tower who did it. As it turned out, the blonde was afraid that the messenger would open the letter first, so he came up with a good plan. In any case, Aroa would still become the Empress. She deserved this place like no one else and would wonderfully rule the whole country. The lady returned to her friend, and now they are together again. The blonde cannot restrain himself. He hugs the woman again, right in the middle of the conversation. He has no desire to let her go, because too much time has passed to behave more decently. The brunette rushes forward, taking the beauty away. She had already said that she wanted to be let go, but obviously her friend was not going to listen. Anakin smiles, asking if Belle wants to be hugged too. Looking around, the main character blinks her eyes in bewilderment. For some reason, she thought that the two were friends. Only the magician thinks so, because the owner of the tower looks extremely irritated and does not want to make contact. The brunette feels good even when he's alone, so he almost immediately refused. But Anakin still won't let go. The handsome man has other thoughts. He felt sorry for the loner, so at the academy they got a little closer to become friends. Stepping between the two, the lady makes sure that they don't quarrel anymore. They don't have time for that anyway. They will be nice later. Everything else is completely useless. She doesn't want to be even more irritated. There is one more important matter now. They will begin their preparations with it. Anakin himself should already be aware of how things are going. But in the end, he shakes his head and then drops to one knee, asking for Her Highness to give orders. Smiling, the lady begins her speech. She appoints Willow as her personal advisor. The plan was made when the news appeared a month ago, and then the beauty decided that in this way she would take her friend into her team. He is a real genius. Belle, standing behind, is even more angry. He does not understand how one can make decisions so quickly and trust some magician. The beauty is not embarrassed by anything. They are old good friends. There are no more like Anakin in this world. Everyone can only envy his excellent qualities. Willow lowers his head and gently kisses the girl's hand. He swears allegiance because that's all he ever wanted to do. Being with such a lady is what will always be most important. He quietly asks to be careful with Belle. He has outsmarted many. The smile on his lips becomes even brighter and bigger. The fact that the blonde won his friend in Baduk is not a scam. He was just too good. The words cause another wave of anger that comes out. A new stage of the squabble begins. Furchin declares that his acquaintance used everyone indiscriminately and was also engaged in usury. The interlocutor is not so simple. He reminds how the owner of the tower sucks the souls out of innocent magicians. The Empress was tired of talking and listening. She already understood that her friends had a lot of problems when they were at school. There were still some things that needed to be discussed, so the woman asked Belle to step aside, allowing him to breathe in some space. The man obeys but remains angry. He falls on the sofa and turns away. The lady clarifies what the situation is. In the palace now, according to the new servant, there is complete chaos which no one can stop. While the sick Luciano spent all his time in the bedroom, real power passed into the hands of the aristocrats of the council that the girl met an hour before this conversation. They behave as they please and want no one to interfere. Those gathered had absolutely no idea that they would obey the new emperor. Those who now possess the greatest power are Archduke Aelier and his daughter Roxana. Stopping their greedy hands will be the hardest, one might even say almost impossible. The girl remembers very well what the Duchess was like. She was a real horror, a hurricane rushing forward. Once, after the race, she tried to get close to the horse. The blonde assured that second place was also good, but the red-haired one did not hear. She only pushed her friend aside. Roxana was angry. She raised her blade and dealt with the horse in a few seconds. Someone like her did not need an animal that took second place. It deserved to die. It suffered only because the princess blocked the way trying to save it. The beauty made sure that she no longer had to take second place. The maiden was always a child whose aura did not at all correspond to a child's. This was a certain problem that could not be ignored. People around her were afraid of her. The redhead is just like her father. He killed soldiers who didn't win the battle the first time. Maybe the lady is even more cruel than him. And the duo still kill people, just like before. Their family hates to lose. The only thing the Empress doesn't understand is why they haven't returned yet. After the victory in Kesman, there's no point in staying. Anakin exhales. Noah probably expected this, but still asks unnecessary questions. Everyone knows that there is no simpler pretext for taking money out of the treasury than war. They will probably not return soon. No one knows whether they will end the fighting or start it again. In their heads, there is wind and thoughts that are very difficult to understand. The princess is now like the sword of the empire, only everyone knows that the sword is trying to pierce its owner. Despite how things are, she thought that by putting our men on the throne, she would be able to twist it as she wants, creating a future for herself in the palace. Upon hearing the news that Arnoa has ascended to the throne, the girl will try to kill her. The girl is not as easy to tame as her brother. This will be a problem. It remains to put everything in order before the Duke and Duchess return back. There's still time for this. The heroine asks again, what about the relations between the aristocrats? The man lowers his voice to say again that there is complete chaos there. Nothing has changed. They hate each other to the depths of their souls. Each considers himself better than the other. While they still ignore the imperial family, but still want to seat someone from their family in the position of the Empress's advisor, it will be beneficial for them to have a trusted person nearby who can report on every moment of the work. It turned out that everyone who is on the council is competing, and Anakin drove a wedge between them, although if not him, then who else would do it? Now the blonde made it so that it would not work out to cooperate, but there is almost no time left. We can consider this to be the last chance. It costs the heroes nothing to understand that these were the machinations of Her Majesty. Unification can happen at any convenient moment. Even if it is only a temporary measure, they will still go for it. The blonde is more resourceful. She thinks faster in order to complete her tasks. Until then, they have to lure at least one person to their side, thereby doing herself a favor. The girl asks to tell about the identity of the person she can use. Someone on the council must be strong enough to stand up to the Duke and his daughter. Anakin smiles. There is only one family, and the lady knows exactly who we are talking about. There is no one else besides them. He should think twice. The one who can resist the Duke from the north is the defeated Rickle from the south. He is an excellent candidate who should be used to one's advantage. The Empress is smart. She herself understands that there will be no other options. The girl does not give up. She asks about Baron Bent. The man is strong and loyal, but from a small family he has one thought. He will not break up the family for the sake of loyalty to the crown. This will not suit him. The lady nods. She realized that using another person would not work, but she still had Countess Herman. This woman does not like to suffer losses. She will not even listen if it is not beneficial to her. Exhaling, the blonde doesn't know what to do next. She's not sure that Riquiel will take her side, because in the past he did nothing when the lady was taken to the tower. He didn't listen to her pleas to leave her niece nearby and didn't believe that she did nothing. Finally, realizing that nothing else seems to be possible, the beauty turns around and asks to pass on a message to one of the council, and then leaves. Anakin turns to Belle, who is lying on the couch. If she is finished, it is time to return home. The brunette ignores his former friend and instead turns to Arnoa. They discuss the same thing in the carriage. The mage is not sure that they will be able to defeat the Duke. The Queen simply has no other choice, considering that the acquaintance is not going to help. It seems that this means that the lady could choose the mage if only there was such a possibility. She smiles, asking if he will stay by her side. If the heroine asks, there is hope that everything will be fine, and his answer will be positive. Getting up from the couch, the brunette turns away and shakes his head. According to Anakin, he should leave since the work is already finished. It's a pity. But the beauty knew in advance that everything would turn out exactly this way. There is no choice. The woman is about to leave, but she is stopped. In fact, everything is not so bad. The palace is much more interesting than the man thought, so very soon she will return back to be near. A drop of love shines in his eyes. In the main hall is Rickle, who has just arrived there. Noticing how Her Majesty appeared in the passage, the young man stands up and greets. He and the man have not seen each other for a long time, so it is time to sit down and move on to discussions. What happened in the past obviously left its mark on the lives of both. The girl promises that she will forgive everything that happened. But at the same time, the brunette promises that he will forget everything. Silence hung in the room. Rikiel jumps up and shouts. His family did nothing bad to the Empress, and she should not behave like this. The blonde is also angry. As soon as Luciano asked, the Duke immediately handed the girl over to the man, believing that it was right. Blue-eyed recalls the moment when Luciano ascended to the throne 3 years ago. On the same day, an order was issued to interrogate the girl, suspecting her of rebellion, and after that the man handed over the heroine. Although the baby's last name was never Raquel, she was still the daughter of the boy's sister. This cannot mean too much. But in the end, the attitude had to be different. Nowhere else can one find someone who would send his niece, with whom he had lived for a long time, to a dangerous place like the Imperial Palace. The man shouts back, he himself did not lock the girl in. It was the late king. Raquel repeats that he did everything in his power and tried to protect the beauty, even if it was quite difficult. The lady's voice lowers. She does not trust this. While Her Majesty was at her uncle's house, he did everything in his power to ensure that she did not feel discomfort, for which she should be grateful, and not behave as she does now. In fact, it is true. Until Empress Anastasia died and Luciano seized her sister, the girl lived with Raquel as a miserable parasite, did nothing and had no responsibility. In that noble place, deprived of any drop of affection, the beauty lived like a mouse. Fearing every rustle, the Duke was not kind to her, but never caused pain. The girl wanted more. She wanted love. In the end, the blonde can't blame her uncle. He tried to be exemplary. The lady has already taken enough revenge on his life, so she's not going to blame him any further. Although the young man was the ruler of the Southern Territories, he had no right to disobey the order of His Majesty. All he had to do was follow every moment and fulfill the will of the Emperor. The blonde was captured on suspicion of treason, and for that reason alone she was not helped. If the duchy had made an attempt, they would certainly have come under suspicion as well, and that would not have ended well. Everything turned out quite logically, nothing can be said about it, but there are still regrets in her head. The lady cannot get rid of the thought that her uncle could have intervened, and then her story would have turned out differently. The heroine exhales. Since the interlocutor says that this is all that he could do, then there is no point in discussing it further. The only thing the lady does not understand is why she was not told where she would be sent. Luciano then also intervened, not allowing her to warn. The beauty understood everything. The last question is why should the Empress apologize, knowing that the Willow family is Raquel's servant. The girl still appointed Anakin as an advisor to the palace. The brunette found out everything when the blonde came to him the day before to convey a request for a meeting. The man had repeatedly helped the family that served him and hoped for some kind of return. If it weren't for Her Majesty, Anakin would have become Rickle's top assistant. The Duke's family values qualified employees above all else, and everyone around knows this. Surely the lady thought that the man would simply let her get away with the fact that she takes the best for herself. But this is not at all the case, and this is not connected. The blonde cannot help but know what is most important. The heroine's mind flashes back to a conversation with her mother, who repeatedly told her how things really should be. Wherever her daughter goes, she should take with her someone who can help her. The girl must make the man devoted to the cause of her master and devote him to all her affairs, as Anastasia taught. The queen did everything possible to gather the best entourage for herself. Miss Rudes and Anakin are the best of the best. The mission was a success. You can understand the Duke's feelings. He is angry because Willow is an outstanding genius, whom he has been waiting for many years. The brunette lowers his head. In the end, their family would never have completely taken possession of him. It is better to just forget about it. The blonde chuckled. They wouldn't have to upset each other, because a good plan had just appeared in her head. A smile appeared on her face the same second she extended her hand forward. Chaos is happening in Kesmen. The Duchess is screaming and throwing things in different directions. The knights have retreated to be safe. No one understands what happened again. Perhaps it is all because the order came to stop the battle in Kesmen because of the agricultural season. It is unclear what to do if Roxana loses her temper with her squad. The girl is asked to calm down, but the cold voice drops a few more tones. She is not going to be calm. The woman does not understand why their plan failed. An eccentric has ascended to the throne and will now continue to ruin all the long-established strategies. What makes the situation worse is that we are talking about Empress Aroa. The Duke still continues to try to convince his daughter otherwise. Her anger will not change much. She will just have to lose her life force. A month has passed since Luciano died. Aelier seem to be separated from the whole world. Although they have the right to rule this life, as was intended, they are only now learning who will become the new ruler. All this time the family thought that Banus would take the throne. If they knew the truth, they would do something. Somehow, the actions changed, and so did reality. Noah's ascension to the throne was late, and the divorce in the last minutes was an even greater shock. The guy convinces that it is definitely not their fault that what happened. It turned out that the king of Dehan is a real idiot. Because of his mistress, he divorced the queen, because he did not know that he could become the ruler of the continent. The redhead doesn't want to believe that there are such stupid people in the world who don't care what life brings them to. It's also difficult for Aelier, but what happened is real. The man gave away all the dowry that Her Majesty had brought with her, as if it meant nothing to him. Every last penny was given away, including Her Majesty Anastasia's jewelry. That man is too stupid, but this time the Duke's daughter is interested in what Aroa herself is like. The red-haired man assures them that they have nothing to worry about. The new ruler of the continent is a very simple person. The child was born into an imperial family, but immediately lost her mother, so she was not properly trained. The girl could not control herself and resist people like Luciano, so she only trembled at the sight of him. As is known, the blonde also calmly endured all the antics of the servants and her husband when she was in Dehan. She allowed his mistress to mock her and then went through a divorce, the most difficult thing in life. Roxana cannot believe that such a person, who suffered from some servant, became the new queen. For her, it is perhaps too much. The daughter of the Empress grew up a coward. The lady's memories reflect the day when the little girl tried to protect the horse and tried to make sure that he did not suffer. In a word, if she is so simple, it will not be difficult to take her under control. The duo initially targeted Arian because the guy was stupid enough, but compared to him, Aroa was a puppet that was even easier to control, and they had the luck that should have been expected even earlier. If so, they will send a warning and also do everything personally, and not like with the king of Dirkhan, the new queen is obliged to fall at the feet of the Duchy of Aelier. She has no choice. The hall is once again discussing what happened not so long ago. Many have already realized that Her Majesty got divorced and returned to the kingdom. Banas and his mistress could no longer live like that, so he explained about the divorce around the time the previous emperor died. Toubert also supports the conversation but thinks that the act was stupid. It is hard to believe that the young man missed the chance to take over an entire continent just because of his beloved, who in the end turned out not to be pregnant. They say that the blonde man knew nothing. Now he is bedridden because of his grief. If so, the new ruler became the head only because of the divorce, and in fact does not know how to organize the country because she did not receive proper training. The lady was the youngest of 3 children in the family. Her mother passed away when she was still young. She has no choice but to trust the words of the aristocrats. And to do this, their alliance is obliged to choose someone to take the place of the advisor. Bento did not find the heroine weak-willed, but no one knows where the truth is and where the lie is. The man is not going to listen to the Baron. He probably wants to be the first to approach Her Majesty. All conversation stopped very quickly. As soon as the Empress entered the hall, she heard how everyone in chorus glorified the son of the Empire and immediately fell silent. The meeting had not yet officially begun. There was nothing to discuss. The woman is different from how the aristocrats who were at the first meeting described her. She does not look as stupid as it seemed before, so one wants to believe that she will still obey. The lady is grateful that the aristocrats maintained order in the country for a whole month before her arrival. She takes out the papers. The first thing they will have to discuss is the war in Kesman. There will be no need to wait any longer. Tuber is the first to run forward, asking why it was necessary to ask everything so abruptly. In his opinion, there's absolutely no point in this. The heroine waves it off. She heard that the council was preparing for this, so she will not retreat. The brunette nods. That's true, but as we know, he wanted to start the conversation gradually so that the girl couldn't take control of the situation into her own hands. He gets up from his seat to start the topic and explain everything in a way that is convenient for the council. At the moment, Archduke Aelier and his daughter are engaged in a fierce battle in the kingdom of Kesman. Saying this, the young man does not suspect that the queen has long been aware of all this. A special detachment was created, formed by His Majesty. These soldiers were completely destroyed by the enemy army. No matter how much the leader wanted to protect them, nothing worked. The beauty nods, remembering that she had heard about that detachment, which included only people from Dehan. The Baron steps back, looking amazed that the lady knows such details. In difficult times, additional capital is needed. The lady picks up the papers on which something is written. It is obvious that the Archduke has again requested a huge sum of money. Judging by the records for this year, this is already the third request. He still does not have enough. It is obvious that more funds will be needed because war is a rather complicated matter that cannot be postponed. Even if it is a 10,000-strong army, the imperial detachment is 10 times larger. It seems that Kesman's army is too good. The brunette doesn't say out loud what he's thinking, but he understands that the Duke has just been ridiculed. He won't get away with it. The owner of the territories is benefiting from the fact that the terrain there is steep. In this regard, he's lucky. The blonde doesn't want to listen to what they are trying to tell her. Everyone already knows that the funds allocated for the army this year were completely spent last time. There's nothing left, and there is nowhere to get money from. Apparently, Her Majesty is simply worried about finances. In truth, the amount that His Majesty the Archduke requested is not that big. The guy has a suggestion. Where can one get gold? The Queen's dowry returned to her after the divorce. Among the cart, there is a whole pile of stones and other precious stones. The man reminds about the dark diamonds that were delivered from the crown. The woman frowns. She already understood that they want her money to go to the army. The heroine cannot answer immediately because otherwise it would be too harsh. Not at all what is recommended to do, the dowry that the lady brought back. No one dares to touch because it is only her property. Even in the event of a divorce, as it was written, the husband was obliged to return everything down to the last penny. But now, the Baron offers to give away what is most important. The Duke longs for the Empress's submission and thus hopes to achieve this. Her Majesty must be upset, but it doesn't matter. It's worth thinking about how to go beyond the limits. The girl must look wider as a true ruler of the continent and understand that her own desires mean nothing. If only the Duke and his daughter could protect the North, it would be better. But if that didn't happen, the Empire might collapse like a house of cards. The Empire doesn't have such talented army commanders. They are wonderful. The Empress must realize the importance of the war. This is something she should not shy away from. Fulfilling the Archduke's requests would be a good deed. Tubert is spreading too sweetly, although in his soul he understands that all his words are not true. Putting her hand on the table, the heroine pushes away the order. which only remained to be signed, she understood and knows that the previous ruler was far from martial arts and war strategies. Without listening to the end, the young man agrees with the words. Aelier would be grateful if the girl would donate her personal property to pay the army's expenses. Stopping the flow, the girl asks if there is anyone present who is against this statement, thereby besieging Tubert. It would be much better to reach a peace agreement than to continue a war that is unclear when it will end. It could happen in 5 years, and this option does not suit the lady. The country is not obliged to suffer because of someone's inability. Lord North enters the game, who understands that the situation needs to be saved before Her Majesty refuses. The girl knows nothing at all about how things are in the Empire. This is a difficult struggle that has been going on for several years. The Duke and Princess have already saved the Empire from a hopeless situation several times. The lady is silent. She frowns, thereby showing how disgusted she is to listen to all this. They have already saved the Kaizion Empire several times, which owns the entire continent, which even sounds absurd. The Duke, according to the Alliance, is most devoted to the kingdom. The princess's fiancé was recently killed, for which the Empress must repay Roxana in full so that she does not feel sad. If, to tell the truth, the money that the lady brought with her will not even be enough. The woman is pretty tired of listening to all the fables. They will continue to argue if they are not asked to shut up. Tubrat wants to think that everything will be as they said, but the heroine answers with a firm no. The only thing they are right about is that the girl still does not know anything at all. It is unclear how the girl planned her thoughts, but if she does not know anything, it would be much better to listen to people who, at least, a little understand the truth. This way, everything will only be better. The blonde asks to postpone the conversation. In order not to make the aristocrats angry, the lady reminds them that they will discuss everything later. In the end, she still understood what they wanted to say, so there will definitely be no problems with this. She needs time to think over all the details and make a decision. Baron North smiles. In the end, the heroine will do as she is ordered. The Empress, who knows nothing, will not be able to defeat the Duke. He is definitely stronger than she is. The girl turns to the advisor, saying that by the next meeting, he will make a decision by that time. If they want to speak out, they can write letters. After the meeting, the Empress was stopped by Willow, who offered to take her to his chambers. The lady recalls what she told Duke Rickle. She knows that his family does not betray their own. This is one of the things that her mother taught the girl. The lady is Anastasia's daughter, but her last name is Kaision. She knows that it is hard for a man to accept his niece as part of the family that she is. It must be hard to side with the blonde, so they will have an agreement, which, on the contrary, will come to the rescue. The girl enters the main hall, bows her head, greeting the son of the Empire, and tries not to hide her true feelings. It has been about 3 years since they saw each other. The heroine smiles, asking Penelope to come closer. For some reason, the redhead doesn't answer. You can't even hear words about whether she missed the beauty or not. The woman spreads her arms out to the sides, as if inviting the girl to come over and hug. The beauty remains on the other side of the room and lowers her eyes to the floor. Finally, she can't stand it anymore and runs forward to literally cling to her sister. She quickly corrects herself, no longer calling her friend by name. In the past, when the main character still lived in the estate of Duke Rickle, she was very lonely. The only child who communicated with her was Penelope. The baby was constantly nearby, trying to make contact. Another day, the girl tried to ask to play with her. She never gave up, even when she heard a refusal. The blonde smiled but reminded that she was a princess, which meant she had to be called correctly, not by her name. Penelope only had a brother, so when she had a sister, she constantly demanded that they play with her. It was impossible to get away from this. Even when she was only 10, she still loved the lady very much, because she became the closest. Everything was going well, but it ended when the girl was taken back to the palace. She understood that she did not want this, but in the end it all ended too sadly. Rickle cried when she learned of the news. The lady explains that it is impossible to even imagine how happy she was when the Empress called her into her chambers. The blonde smiles. She's also glad to see her sister. They were separated for too long a period of time. Penelope, without realizing it, became a new sister for the girl. She could change her attitude after everything that happened in recent years. But still, the girl greets her as joyfully as before. If there is one thing in the world that will not change, it is something like this. The Empress did the right thing by inviting her friend. They have something to talk about, so there won't be any problems. The lady says that in private they can simply call her sister without using any unnecessary regalia, which is completely unnecessary here. Her father told her not to do that, but one can disobey once. The red-haired girl has matured considerably and has become an ideal candidate for a personal servant. Lowering her head, the girl mumbles something. If she was forced to come to the castle, she can always go back to the estate. Sharply waving her hands, the beauty assures that she herself really wanted to get to Arnoa. Something is wrong, but the lady does not say what exactly happened. Kaizian carefully clarifies, receiving a full answer. Penelope knows that such an offer is made to her in order to unite with the Reichel family, and should be happy just to be in the palace. In fact, it would be difficult for the queen to gain recognition if she simply united with her uncle's family. Now it was better to form an alliance with someone more influential. This was exactly what the Duke himself pointed out when he heard that the woman wanted to become one with them. It would be an honor for a man if Penelope became Her Majesty's personal servant, but it would be hard for them to be considered one. The girl had already made a plan, so even something like this did not frighten her. She should show that they were one. The blue-eyed woman did not tell that she was proposing to her sister not for the sake of a union. She understood that this was what people might think, but it was never too late to reveal true thoughts. None of the servants will worry about their allies. The red-haired one is one of a kind, so the lady will continue to hold on to her. She will never be able to find a more noble girl anywhere, and never whom she can trust completely. The only thing the young lady asks is to focus on the future and not neglect her abilities. Others in Rickel's place would have long ago taken advantage of everything that came their way. Turning closer to the window, the Empress walks forward while speaking. She wants to know what her friend expects from the future. Perhaps she lacks marriage or some special title. The position of personal servant of Her Majesty gives both. As it turns out, none of this matters to Penelope. She's not interested at all. She wants to be in the center of high society. As it was with the previous ruler, Anastasia, people called the lady nothing less than the treasure of the empire. The beauty's power was as great as her influence, but Sister Arnoa heard that she was so incredible that even after her death, everyone spoke of her charm and talent. Because with her abilities, she was even able to stop a war by making beautiful speeches. Listening to the girl wanting to become just like the great Cassian, the blonde nods. She came up with a good plan in a second that could be used. Getting up from her chair, the lady asks if her sister has already debuted. This could also be used. The heroine has not yet appeared in high society, especially for Rakiel. Her Majesty will arrange a luxurious ceremony, which will take place right in the imperial palace, which will demonstrate her high status. The ball itself begins, and from all corners of the empire, various great dukes and barons have gathered. Anakin follows the young lady, noticing that after the accession to the throne, the first banquet is not an inauguration ceremony, but the debut of Penelope Riquiel, who is spinning in the middle of the hall. The theme of the banquet is a bit wrong, or maybe it's just the advisor who thinks so. The most important thing is to have more people. The real benefit will go to the future servant of Her Majesty. The looks can be noticed immediately, and you can understand where they are directed. Everything around is too luxurious. It's even impossible to breathe. The party captivates everyone, and the main character in the center of the hall catches admiring glances. The girl is happy. This is even evident from her wide smile. The ladies who have gathered begin to spread gossip and whisper. Penelope's debut took place in the imperial palace itself, and this is a reason for envy. The beauty's dress is wonderful. The color perfectly matches the color of her hair and delicate skin. The redhead's assessment will play into the Empress's hands, and the beauty hasn't even started yet. She's just twirling in a dance. Anakin smiles. Now he understands that the plan will most likely be crowned with success. The duo came up with the perfect step-by-step instructions together. There shouldn't be any problems. The blonde hopes that her sister's part will be done no worse. She watches the hall from the sidelines. If it doesn't work out, The heroine will give her dear uncle one gift that is prepared. In the end, hope dies last, so it remains to move to the end, following only forward. The aristocrats continue to whisper, everything that has been arranged is done in the best possible way. It seems that the Rickle family has the support of Her Majesty. The Empress still does not have her own people in the palace, and in this way she will try to get her place. The woman threw a banquet to show others how much she cared for the only maid who agreed to serve her. The young lady's mother thinks so, and so her daughter spreads this to others. The guy next to him smiles, understanding what the dialogue is leading to. Aroa will try to lure the Rakiel family to his side, which, as you know, is quite strong. The idea is funny, and most importantly, true. A luxurious banquet and an expensive dress must have some hidden meaning that cannot be read. They say that what a girl has in excess is wealth, and what she is hunting for is treasure. Starting from the clothes that Penelope has and ending with the manner of speech and behavior, everything is taken from the image of the previous Empress Anastasia. Many notice that the lady even has the same scent of perfume. So there are even more similarities. The whisper spreads like a wave and reaches the Duke himself. No matter how many decorations they put on the girl, she will still never be the late queen, if the meaning of this banquet is to give all this to the loser from the south. Then the girl's limit is only the small kingdom of Dehan, from where she came back. People are laughing. They don't see how Her Majesty's advisor is standing nearby and conveying the news to his mistress. Going out to the center of the hall, the lady carries a box behind her, in which the main treasure of this evening is hidden. Now the main official part of the event begins. Anastasia was the head of the Rakiel family, which was the center of high society. Everyone knew her as the flower of the empire, which had no equal. Her every movement was filled with love and sophistication. The previous emperor, Kallian Peleus Cassion, Arnoa's father, appointed his wife as the second queen. He understood that this position was worth all the jewels in the world, and so he gave her a pair of black diamonds, the likes of which did not exist anywhere else in the entire empire. The woman was not interested in blood-red rubies or deep green emeralds. She loved only black jewelry. Before receiving the gift, the lady made it clear that she would not accept anything except special jewelry, and then began to wait for His Majesty to find what he was asked for. The dark stones were much darker than the deepest sea. As if to symbolize constancy, they resembled the cosmos along with the stars that shine brightly as soon as the night falls. A pair of diamonds whose shine was beautiful. The man intended to give the girl, who became the treasure of the empire, all the most wonderful things. He did not want to leave Anastasia without a special gift. The story was so romantic that after this, black jewelry became popular throughout the empire. Stepping forward and stopping in the middle of the hall, Her Majesty turns to her dear sister. She wants to know if the lady likes this whole banquet that is arranged in her honor. For the girl, this is all new, and she cannot help but like it. The redhead promises that she will gladly become a servant to the one who literally gave her everything she could wish for. The lady asks to raise her head. She said this not as an empress, but as a close person. So today she would really like to see the girl happy. On this day, you can forget about your duties. The lady has prepared a gift for the one who is now in front of her, and for the one who deserves it, she asks the servant to bring a box. The thing opens and the hall is illuminated by the beauty of a necklace with a dark diamond. Her Majesty gives the most valuable thing she has. The crowd immediately starts to buzz. The aristocrats try to restrain themselves, but they do not believe what Her Majesty has just said. Many thought that the stones would be worn by the queen, but somehow this well-known fact was not confirmed. She gave the jewel to her sister. Rakel himself froze with his mouth open. He couldn't believe that all this was true. Tears welled up in his eyes and began to roll down his cheeks. Herman, standing behind, was more interested than anyone else, because the Empress was giving her mother's jewelry to her cousin, considering the fact that this was too much even for relatives. The woman calmly congratulates the Duke. Whether he wanted it or not, his daughter has now inherited the name of Anastasia. Becoming just as outstanding, the man does not believe that this is real. He needs a little more time to understand what is happening and fully rejoice. This is how the Kaision Empire and the Duchy united. They don't need anything else, Only these moments together, the young man involuntarily recalls that dinner when Her Majesty promised that she would prove her loyalty to her uncle's family and the joy of being around such wonderful people. The title that had previously belonged to the former ruler passed to Penelope. There were no longer those who believed that the Empress and her family were separated from Raquel, because on that evening of the event they became one, which would forever remain so. The girl was counting on a favorable ending, and she got it. Hermann thought that few people would be happy and did not know what would happen next, but she did not expect that Aroa, who was ignored even in the small kingdom of Dehan, would decide on such a step. She removed all doubts that could ever exist. The brunette looks at the middle of the hall, where his daughter, together with the blonde, is still accepting congratulations. It is unbearable for him to understand how a person can be so similar to his mother. They are like two drops of water, identical. The redhead can't stop smiling and thanking her sister. The girl nods. Thus the wish was fulfilled. In order to become the top of society, a lady must attract exactly this much attention. This will help her status. The music for the first slow dance is heard. The beauty calmly asks her sister if she is ready to go out on the dance floor and clarifies whether she has found her first partner. After a negative answer, the heroine asks Willow to keep her company, since he is still standing next to the Empress. Both freeze in bewilderment, because the idea was not to their liking. The blonde tries to avoid the request, hinting that the men standing nearby are ready to fight for a place next to the youngest Rickle, the queen objects. If the girl cannot choose while everyone's eyes are on her, people will think unnecessary things. The safest choice is, of course, Anakin. There is no choice left. Before the end of today's ball, the two are obliged to dance at least one dance. The man agrees, but asks that he and Her Majesty dance afterwards too, because this is his only condition. The woman calmly agrees and lets the couple go into the middle of the hall, where others are already circling. Before leaving, the lady warns the servant that she will go for a walk in the garden. The musicians need to be supervised. The music must be only the best. Finally, the young lady found herself outside. She sat down on the edge of the fountain and breathed in the fresh air. This breath of freedom would not hurt, because inside the castle there were too many guests and responsibilities. Because of the hours spent standing, her legs now ache terribly. She wants to lie down. Before the queen left, Willow asked a very reasonable question. He did not understand why Her Majesty needed all this. She herself could not become a debutante, and no one congratulated her. The guy would lack the banquet to be dedicated to his friend. Be that as it may, it is too late to regret anything, because everything that was discussed has passed. The moment is lost. The beauty tries to throw unnecessary thoughts out of her head when she hears a suspicious rustling coming from the bushes on the alley. A cat emerges, which the blonde has not seen for a very long time. Her emotions take over her mind, and so in a second the animal ends up in her hands, while Her Majesty hugs him. During the time they have not seen each other, Snowball has only become even more beautiful. His fur shines in the moonlight. The man is clearly not in a good mood. He's not going to wait until the squeezing is finished. A second later, the transformation back into human form shocked the heroine. In the opinion of the magician, his friend is touching him too openly, without thinking about the consequences. The girl abruptly lets go of her friend, trying to justify herself by the fact that she wanted to touch the cat, not the guy. He moves away, trying not to blush too much to change the subject. Arnoa asked why Belle appeared so suddenly without leaving any warning. The man had already promised that he would definitely come back. Even when he went back to the tower, he always thought only of Her Highness. He bows down and extends his hand to ask the lady for a dance. She backs away, asking what happened and why her friend is doing this. The young man raises an eyebrow. He has heard that it is customary to dance at the debutante ball, so that is exactly what they will do. The girl should not refuse, but he still laughs, noting that the event is not dedicated to her. She is simply managing it. For Belle, it makes no difference. He pulls the girl closer to him as soon as she accepts his palm. He came to the castle only for the sake of the Empress, which means he will dance only with her. After the music starts, they move in time. After the evening ended, the mage from the tower returned back to his chambers. He walked through a funnel made of magic dust. His face showed a serene expression, as if he didn't care at all about what was happening. Near the portal sits a raccoon, who is calmly eating an apple. Noticing the owner, he is glad that he finally returned. At 12, the passage would have closed, so the man asked Belle to return a little earlier. He was worried. The guy tries to wash the fruit, but his friend reminds him of what he has already repeated many times. There is no point in washing apples grown with the help of magic. Everything is fine even like this. The friend does not calm down. Despite everything, all food should be washed before eating. No other mage is under such a strong influence as Ruka. He's constantly too cautious. The boy waves it off, asking how the ball went. Immediately after the question, the brunette thinks. Images of the evening flash through his head. The banquet was in full swing, but at the moment when the young man and Aroa were alone, it seemed as if there were only these two in this world. The voices of the surrounding people evaporated in a few moments, and nothing else mattered compared to the queen. She looked wonderful. A smile appeared on his face when the head of the tower calmly answered that he liked everything. The kid was filled with happiness. After all, his training had borne fruit, because before that they had been trained in some backwater of the fortress. The hero involuntarily recalls how everything went. If he had paid someone, it would have been much easier and faster without listening. The hand turns into its human form, jumps on the spot, repeating that he knew the fact of his usefulness. The young man calmly watched his friend's movements, but after a few minutes he interrupted his flow, noticing that he was dancing incorrectly. The Empress moved much better, more harmoniously and beautifully, as if she had only learned this. The girl was not so indecisive. Everything was as if in a fog, and accordingly, she was different. The man wilted, after all. Her Majesty was taught by Anakin, and he is known as the most elegant gentleman. He dances so well that many ladies in the academy were seduced by this very thing. The tower's owner also learns quite quickly, so there probably won't be any problems. No need to think about what was and what isn't yet. The brunette liked it, but it wasn't easy trying to waltz around the garden watching his movements. The hand should have warned about the fact that when you dance, almost always the heart beats so wildly that it is impossible to cope with it. Having heard the presentation, the young man refuses to the side, not understanding what is being discussed at all. No one warned that dancing used up a lot of energy, making one feel tired. The servant did not understand what was wrong. Usually even poison did not affect the master, but suddenly it became too difficult for him. The body-strengthening magic that the devil cast has already dissipated, and apparently now the fatigue will always manifest itself. The hero, angry, orders to stop calling his mother inappropriately and just shut up. The brunette's expression sank, and he realized that it was time to take advantage of the moment and share the bad news. They said that the Leighton family had started having seizures again, and the symptoms matched those that had always been present. This was already the 5th time something like this had happened. The hero will most likely do the same as he did before. There is no suitable treatment, so the parents want the same as the magician. The young man is silent. He does not want to remember the method that Belle once mentioned. Not long ago, His Majesty found an option that could suit everyone suffering from an illness. With the help of the soul stone of the imperial family, everything is possible. Such a material is rare and valuable. It is not so easy to get it. Therefore, it works the best. Now, the only person with such an item is the Empress, and in addition to all this, it will be easiest to approach her. It will not be difficult. The hero suggests targeting Cassian again, trying to take away her soul. In any case, the heroine had put her soul as a price. Back on the day they made the bet in Dehan, it is obvious that the lady has no meaning in life at all, so she will not lose anything from this. If the young man could once again force the one he had met not so long ago to give up her life, everything would turn out as it could not have been otherwise. Ruka continued speaking until his interlocutor grabbed him by the throat, warning him for the first and last time that such nonsense was forbidden. Trying to breathe, the man promises that he will never do anything like that again and will never talk about the soul of the Empress. Finally, the neck is released, and jumping back, the young man asks how they could treat him so terribly. This is beyond all bounds. The protagonist no longer intends to talk about meaningless things. Getting up from the chair, he heads for the door. The best solution would be to go to Leighton. There, perhaps, he will be able to find at least some clue that will help solve the case.